Договорились о создании группы высокого уровня, которая объединила бы капитанов российского и американского бизнеса. Предприниматели лучше знают, как выстраивать взаимовыгодную кооперацию. Пусть подумают, что можно сделать, и сделают свои предложения на этот счет. Президент Трамп в очередной раз затронул тему так называемого российского вмешательства в избирательные процессы в Соединенных Штатах. Мне пришлось повторить то, что говорил уже неоднократно, в том числе и на личных встречах с президентом, что российское государство никогда не вмешивалось и не собирается вмешиваться в американские внутренние дела, в том числе выборный процесс. Какие-либо конкретные материалы, если они будут представлены, мы готовы вместе рассматривать. Например, в рамках рабочей группы по кибербезопасности, о создании которой мы говорили с президентом еще на встрече в Гамбурге. И, конечно, пора размораживать российско-американские связи по линии общественных организаций в культурно-гуманитарной сфере. Совсем недавно, вы знаете, у нас была американская делегация американских конгрессменов, но это воспринимается чуть ли не как историческое событие. А это должно быть рядовым текущим мероприятием. В этой связи мы высказали предложение президенту Соединенных Штатов подумать не только над практическими вопросами, но и над философией выстраивания двухсторонних отношений в долгосрочной перспективе. К такому процессу полезно было бы привлечь опыт экспертов, хорошо знающих историю, нюансы российско-американского взаимодействия. Идея в том, чтобы сформировать экспертный совет из влиятельных российских и американских политологов, ученых, бывших видных дипломатов и военных, который бы занялся поиском точек соприкосновения и осмыслением того, как вывести двустороннее сотрудничество на устойчивую позитивную траекторию. В целом, мы довольны нашей первой полномасштабной встречей. Напомню, что до этого мы только кратко общались на международных форумах. Мы хорошо поговорили с президентом Трампом. Надеюсь, стали лучше понимать друг друга. И я Дональду за это благодарен. Конечно, многочисленные проблемы остаются, и мы не смогли расчистить все завалы. Это невозможно было сделать на первой встрече такой. Но, считаю, сделали первый важный шаг в этом направлении. В заключение хотел бы отметить, что создание рабочей атмосферы переговоров во многом способствовали наши финские хозяева. Благодарны руководству Финляндии, финскому народу, жителям Хельсинки за то, что было сделано. Знаем, что мы доставили много неудобств жителям Хельсинки и приносим за это свои извинения. Благодарю вас.
Thank you. I have just concluded a meeting with President Putin on a wide range of critical issues for both of our countries. We had direct, open, deeply productive dialogue. Went very well. Before I begin, I want to thank President Niinisto of Finland, for graciously hosting today's summit. President Putin and I were saying how lovely it was and what a great job they did. I also want to congratulate Russia and President Putin for having done such an excellent job in hosting the World Cup. It was really one of the best ever, and your team also did very well. It was a great job. I'm here today to continue the proud tradition of bold American diplomacy. From the earliest days of our republic, American leaders have understood that diplomacy and engagement is preferable to conflict and hostility. A productive dialogue is not only good for the United States and good for Russia, but it is good for the world. The disagreements between our two countries are well known, and President Putin and I discussed them at length today. But if we're going to solve many of the problems facing our world, then we're going to have to find ways to cooperate in pursuit of shared interests. Too often in both recent past and long ago, we have seen the consequences when diplomacy is left on the table. We have also seen the benefits of cooperation. In the last century, our nations fought alongside one another in the Second World War. Even during the tensions of the Cold War, when the world looked much different than it does today, the United States and Russia were able to maintain a strong dialogue. But our relationship has never been worse than it is now. However, that changed as of about 4 hours ago. I really believe that. Nothing would be easier politically than to refuse to meet, to refuse to engage, but that would not accomplish anything. As president, I cannot make decisions on foreign policy in a futile effort to appease partisan critics or the media or Democrats who want to do nothing but resist and obstruct. Constructive dialogue between the United States and Russia affords the opportunity to open new pathways toward peace and stability in our world. I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics. As president, I will always put what is best for America and what is best for the American people. During today's meeting, I addressed directly with President Putin the issue of Russian interference in our elections. I felt this was a message best delivered in person. Spent a great deal of time talking about it, and President Putin may very well want to address it, and very strongly, because he feels very strongly about it, and he has an interesting idea. We also discussed one of the most critical challenges facing humanity, nuclear proliferation. I provided an update on my meeting last month with Chairman Kim on the denuclearization of North Korea, and after today, I am very sure that President Putin and Russia want very much to end that problem, going to work with us, and I appreciate that commitment. The President and I also discussed the scourge of radical Islamic terrorism. Both Russia and the United States have suffered horrific terrorist attacks, and we have agreed to maintain open communication between our security agencies to protect our citizens from this global menace. Last year, we told Russia about a planned attack in St. Petersburg, and they were able to stop it cold. They found them, they stopped them, there was no doubt about it. I appreciated President Putin's phone call afterwards to thank me. I also emphasized the importance of placing pressure on Iran to halt its nuclear ambitions and to stop its campaign of violence throughout the area, throughout the Middle East. As we discussed at length, the crisis in Syria is a complex one. Cooperation between our two countries has the potential to save hundreds of thousands of lives. I also made clear that the United States will not allow Iran to benefit from our successful campaign against ISIS. We have just about eradicated ISIS in the area. We also agreed that representatives from our national security councils will meet to follow up on all of the issues we addressed today and to continue the progress we have started right here in Helsinki. Today's meeting is only the beginning of a longer process, but we have taken the first steps toward a brighter future and one with a strong dialogue and a lot of thought. Our expectations are grounded in realism, but our hopes are grounded in America's desire for friendship, cooperation, and peace. And I think I can speak on behalf of Russia when I say that also. President Putin, I want to thank you again for joining me for these important discussions and for advancing open dialogue between Russia and the United States. Our meeting carries on a long tradition of diplomacy between Russia, the United States, for the greater good of all. And this was a very constructive day. This was a very constructive few hours that we spent together. It's in the interest of both of our countries to continue our conversation, and we have agreed to do so. I'm sure we'll be meeting again in the future, often, and hopefully we will solve every one of the problems that we discussed today. So, again, President Putin, thank you very much.
Господа президенты, сейчас журналисты смогут задать по 2 вопроса, российские и американские. Мы начинаем с российских журналистов с кремлевского пула. Пожалуйста, прошу вас, представляйтесь.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Алексей Мешков, я представляю информационное агентство «Интерфакс». У меня вопрос к господину президенту Соединенных Штатов. Во время своего недавнего европейского турне вы сказали, что реализация трубопроводного проекта «Северный поток-2» и других проектов делает Европу заложницей России. И вы предлагали избавить Европу от этой зависимости путем поставок американского сжиженного газа. Но вот эта зима холодная, она показала живучесть нынешней системы энергоснабжения Европы, в то время как Соединенные Штаты вынуждены были покупать дополнительные объемы сжиженного газа, в том числе российского, для Бостона. У меня вопрос. Вот реализация вашей идеи, она более политическая, и не приведет ли она к тому, что в энергоснабжении Европы системе образуется дыра, в которую попадут прежде всего страны-потребители? И второй вопрос, если вы позволите, перед встречей с господином Путиным вы назвали его соперником, но оставили надежду на то, что, возможно, вам удастся эти отношения вывести в дружеские. Вам это удалось? Спасибо.
No, actually, I called him a competitor, and a good competitor he is. And I think the word competitor is a compliment. I think that we will be competing when you talk about the pipeline. I'm not sure necessarily that it's in the best interests of Germany or not, but that was a decision that they made. We'll be competing. As you know, the United States is now, or soon will be, but I think it actually is right now the largest in the oil and gas world. So we're going to be selling LNG, and we'll have to be competing with the pipeline. And I think we'll compete successfully, although there is a little advantage locationally. So I just wish them luck. I mean, I did. I discussed with Angela Merkel in pretty strong tones, but I also know where they're all coming from. And they have a very close source. So we'll see how that all works out. But we have lots of sources now, and the United States is much different than it was a number of years ago when we weren't able to extract what we can extract today. So today we're number one in the world at that, and I think we'll be out there competing very strongly. Thank you very much.
Я позволю себе добавить два слова. Мы говорили с господином президентом, в том числе и на эту тему. Нам известна позиция президента. Но я считаю, что мы, как крупнейшие нефтегазовые державы, а Соединенные Штаты тоже являются такой страной, могли бы конструктивно работать по регулированию международных рынков, потому что мы не заинтересованы как в чрезвычайном падении цен ниже низшего предела, поскольку от этого будут страдать наши производители. Кстати говоря, в том числе и в Соединенных Штатах, имею в виду сланцевый нефть и газ. За определенными рамками исчезает рентабельность производства. Не заинтересованы также мы и в чрезмерно высоких ценах, потому что это будет убивать переработку, машиностроения и прочие отрасли экономики. У нас здесь есть о чем поговорить, и есть поле для сотрудничества. Это первое. Второе, что касается Северного потока-2. Господин президент высказывал озабоченности в связи с возможным исчезновением транзита через Украину. Я заверил господина президента в том, что Россия готова сохранить этот транзит. Более того, мы готовы продлить транзитный контракт, который истекает в следующем году, в случае урегулирования спора между хозяйствующими субъектами в Стокгольмском арбитражном суде.
The first question from a U.S. journalist goes to Jeff Mason from Reuters.
Thank you. Mr. President, you tweeted this morning that it's U.S. foolishness, stupidity, and the Mueller probe that is responsible for the decline in U.S. relations with Russia. Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular? And if so, what would you consider them that they are responsible for?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago, a long time, frankly, before I got to office. And I think we're all to blame. I think that the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia, and we're getting together, and we have a chance to do some great things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping. We have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that we can be working on. But I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. That was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily. And frankly, we beat her. And I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race. And it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it, but the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
For President Putin, if I could follow up as well, why should Americans and why should President Trump believe your statement that Russia did not intervene in the 2016 election, given the evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies have provided? And will you consider extraditing the 12 Russian officials that were indicted last week by a U.S. grand jury?
Well, I'm going to let the president answer the second part of that question. But as you know, the whole concept of that came up perhaps a little bit before, but it came out as a reason why the Democrats lost an election, which frankly, they should have been able to win because the Electoral College is much more advantageous for Democrats, as you know, than it is to Republicans. We won the Electoral College by a lot, 306 to 223, I believe. And that was a well-fought battle. We did a great job. And frankly, I'm going to let the president speak to the second part of your question. But just to say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion. I didn't know the president. There was nobody to collude with. There was no collusion with the campaign. And every time you hear all of these, 12 and 14, it's stuff that has nothing to do, and frankly, they admit, these are not people involved in the campaign. But to the average reader out there, they're saying, well, maybe that does, it doesn't. And even the people involved, some perhaps told misstories, although in one case the FBI said there was no lie. There was no lie. Somebody else said there was. We ran a brilliant campaign, and that's why I'm president. Thank you.
По поводу того, кому верить и кому не верить, и можно ли вообще верить. Никому нельзя верить. С чего вы взяли, что президент Трамп мне доверяет, а я ему в полной степени доверяю? Он защищает интересы Соединенных Штатов Америки. Я защищаю интересы Российской Федерации. У нас есть совпадающие интересы, и мы ищем точки соприкосновения. У нас есть вопросы, в которых мы пока расходимся, и мы ищем варианты, как примирить эти расхождения, как сделать нашу работу конструктивной. Мы должны опираться не на сиюминутные политические интересы каких-то внутренних политических сил в наших странах, а на факты. Назовите мне хотя бы один факт, который говорит о каком-то сговоре в ходе предвыборной кампании в Соединенных Штатах. Это полный бред. Мы не были знакомы, президент только об этом сказал. То, что в российском обществе в ходе избирательной кампании в Соединенных Штатах сложилось определенное мнение в отношении кандидата, но это само собой разумеется. Чего здесь необычного? Президент Трамп в качестве сегодняный президент, в качестве кандидата говорил о необходимости восстановления российско-американских отношений. Но, естественно, в российском обществе возникла симпатия к этому кандидату. И разные люди по-разному могли эту симпатию проявлять. Ну, разве это не естественно? Иметь симпатию к человеку, который хочет выстроить отношения с нашей страной. Нормально. Вот мы слышали обвинения в адрес фирмы Concord. Насколько мне известно, эта фирма наняла адвокатов американских, и все обвинения в ее адрес рассыпаются в американском суде. Но вы посмотрите, что в судах американских происходит. Вот на что надо опираться. А не на случай. Это первое. Второе, что касается вот этих 12 сотрудников якобы наших спецслужб. Я об этом ничего пока не знаю. Мне нужно еще выяснить, о чем там идет речь. Значит, но президент поставил этот вопрос передо мной тоже. Что я могу сказать? Вот, мы в общем обсуждали, но вот что мне приходит в голову и что я могу предложить. У нас существует, действует договор между Соединенными Штатами Америки и Российской Федерацией от 1999 года. Договор о взаимной помощи по уголовным делам. И этот договор работающий. Кстати говоря, эффективно работает. Мы по запросам иностранных государств до сотни, 150 дел возбуждаем уголовно в России. Несколько лет назад наш бывший министр атомной промышленности был выдан Соединенными Штатами в Российскую Федерацию и был осужден российским судом. Это работающий договор. Этим договором предусмотрены определенные процедуры совместной работы. Мы можем предложить, чтобы соответствующая ваша комиссия, которую возглавляет спецпрокурор, фамилия Миллер, значит, вот он может в рамках этого договора направить нам официальный запрос с целью провести допросы тех людей, которые он считает виновными в совершении каких-то правонарушений. Сотрудники нашей прокуратуры и следственных органов эти допросы могут провести и направить соответствующие материалы в Соединенные Штаты. Значит, более того, мы можем сделать и еще один шаг навстречу. Мы можем допустить официальных представителей Соединенных Штатов, в том числе этой комиссии, присутствовать на этих допросах. Но тогда в этом случае мы, безусловно, будем ставить вопрос о том, чтобы эти действия были взаимные. Мы тогда будем ожидать от американской стороны, чтобы они допросили тех официальных лиц, в том числе представителей спецслужб Соединенных Штатов, которых мы подозреваем в совершении противоправных действий на территории Российской Федерации, в присутствии наших следователей. Что я имею в виду? Ну, известное дело фирмы Hermitage Capital, господина Браудера. По данным нашего следствия, группа лиц, деловые партнеры господина Браудера, незаконным образом заработали в России более $1,5 миллиарда. Не заплатили налоги ни в России, ни в Соединенных Штатах. Но деньги эти в Соединенные Штаты перевели. $400 миллионов направили на избирательную кампанию госпожи Клинтон. Это официальные данные, которые в их отчетах пишут. 400 миллионов компаний. Но это их дело, они сделали, возможно, это легально. Но деньги получены нелегально. У нас есть основания полагать, что некоторые сотрудники спецслужб Соединенных Штатов сопровождали эти сделки незаконно. Но это вот только один шаг вперед. Но мы можем поговорить и о расширении нашего сотрудничества. Пожалуйста, варианты возможны, они предусмотрены в соответствующем межправительственном соглашении.
President Putin, did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Да, я хотел, чтобы он выиграл. Потому что он говорил о нормализации российско-американских отношений.
Продолжаем. Я думаю, вполне вопросы 3 может задать кто-то из российского пула. Давайте, Russia Today, вперед.
Спасибо большое. Добрый вечер. Меня зовут Илья Петренко. Как Дмитрий Сергеевич сказал, телеканал RT. First, a question for Mr. Trump in English. Mr. President, would you please go into the details of possibly any specific arrangements for the U.S. to work together with Russia in Syria, if any of these kind of arrangements were made today or discussed? И, если позволите, Владимир Владимирович, тоже вопрос на русском, поскольку сегодня несколько раз уже затрагивалась тема футбола, я на футбольном языке задам вопрос. Господин Помпео чуть ранее сказал, что когда разговор заходит о взаимодействии в Сирии, сейчас мяч на стороне России. Владимир Владимирович, это действительно так? И в таком случае, если да, как вы этим владением воспользовались? Спасибо. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll answer the first part of the question. We've worked with Israel long and hard for many years, many decades. I think we've never has anyone, any country been closer than we are. President Putin also is helping Israel, and we both spoke with Bibi Netanyahu, and they would like to do certain things with respect to Syria, having to do with the safety of Israel. So in that respect, we absolutely would like to work in order to help Israel, and Israel will be working with us. So both countries would work jointly. And I think that when you look at all of the progress that's been made in certain sections with the eradication of ISIS, we're about 98%, 99% there, and other things that have taken place that we've done, and that, frankly, Russia has helped us with in certain respects. But I think that working with Israel is a great thing, and creating safety for Israel is something that both President Putin and I would like to see very much. One little thing I might add to that is the helping of people, because you have such horrible, if you see, and I've seen reports and I've seen pictures, I've seen just about everything. And if we can do something to help the people of Syria get back into some form of shelter and on a humanitarian basis, and that's what the word was, really, a humanitarian basis. I think that both of us would be very interested in doing that, and we will do that. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, but for now, no specific agreements, for instance, between the militaries?
Well, our militaries do get along. In fact, our militaries actually have gotten along probably better than our political leaders for years, but our militaries do get along very well, and they do coordinate in Syria and other places. Okay? Thank you.
Мы говорили, я уже упоминал об этом, о сотрудничестве по гуманитарному направлению, в гуманитарной сфере. Только вчера я обсуждал этот вопрос с президентом Франции, господином Макроном, и мы с ним договорились о том, что мы и с европейскими странами, в том числе с Францией, активизируем эту работу. Мы со своей стороны готовы предоставлять военно-транспортные самолеты для гуманитарных грузов. И говорили об этом сегодня и с президентом Трампом, и думаю, что здесь есть над чем поработать. Что важно, огромное количество беженцев сконцентрировано сейчас в приграничных с Сирией государствах, в Турции, в Ливане, в Иордании. Если мы окажем людям помощь для возвращения к родным очагам, то миграционное давление на страны Европейского Союза, на другие страны, оно многократно может уменьшиться. Считаю это чрезвычайно важным со всех точек зрения. И с гуманитарной, и вот, с точки зрения решения проблем по беженцам. Ну а в целом, действительно, я согласен с президентом. Наши военные работают весьма успешно друг с другом. Надеюсь, что им удастся договариваться так, как это было до сих пор. Мы будем работать и в астанинском формате, имею в виду Россию, Турцию и Иран. Я об этом сегодня тоже проинформировал Дональда. Но мы готовы сопрягать эти усилия с усилиями так называемой малой группы государств для того, чтобы процесс приобрел такой широкий характер и чтобы у нас были максимальные шансы на окончательный успех. Да, что касается того, что мяч на нашей стороне по Сирии, вот господин президент только что говорил о том, что мы закончили и успешно провели чемпионат мира по футболу. Вот насчет мяча. Господину президенту этот мяч передать, теперь мяч на его стороне. Тем более, что США должны будут проводить чемпионат мира 2026 года.
That's right. Thank you very much. We do host it, and we hope we do as good a job. That's very nice. That will go to my son, Barron. We have no question. In fact, Melania, here you go. Okay.
The final question from the United States will go to Jonathan Lemire from the AP.
Thank you. Question for each president. President Trump, yes. You first. Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe? My second question is, would you now, with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server. But I have confidence in both parties. I really believe that this will probably go on for a while, but I don't think it can go on without finding out what happened to the server. What happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentlemen that worked on the DNC? Where are those servers? They're missing. Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? 33,000 emails gone, just gone. I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace that we can't get Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer. Okay, thank you.
Позвольте мне добавить два слова. Я ведь тоже работал в разведке. И знаю, как составляются соответствующие досье. Just management. Это первое. Второе. Я считаю Россию демократическим государством. Надеюсь, вы не отказываете в этом и своей стране, Соединенным Штатам Америки. Соединенные Штаты демократическое государство? А если это так, то окончательный вывод в споре подобного рода может вынести только суд, а не оперативные службы. Вот компания, о которой я упоминал, Concord, одного из наших рестораторов, он ресторанным бизнесом занимается, обвиняют в вмешательстве. Но они не представляют российское государство. Даже если так, могу себе представить. Ну и что? Я уже приводил примеры. У вас есть много людей, в том числе с большим миллиардным состоянием. Господин Сорос, например. Тот везде вмешивается. Но это что? Это разве позиция американского государства? Нет. Это позиция частного лица. Вот так и здесь. Вот есть разбирательство в американском суде. Конечная инстанция всегда только суд. Пусть разбираются, посмотрим. Это касается частных только лиц, уже не государства. А последнее обвинение в отношении якобы сотрудников наших спецслужб, пожалуйста, я же на это ответил. Есть межправсоглашение. Присылайте, пожалуйста, официальный запрос. Пусть комиссия мира пришлет нам запрос. Мы проведем соответствующую работу и ответим. Можно и расширить это сотрудничество, я уже сказал. Но тогда только на взаимной основе. Мы тогда тоже будем ждать от американской стороны доступа к тем лицам, которые мы считаем сотрудниками спецслужб. Давайте предметно обсуждать и не использовать российско-американские отношения в качестве разменной карты во внутриполитической американской борьбе.
A question for President Putin. Thank you. Two questions for you, sir. Can you tell me what President Trump may have indicated to you about officially recognizing Crimea as part of Russia? And then secondly, sir, does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
Значит, президента Трампа позиция по Крыму известна, и он ее придерживается. Он говорит о незаконности присоединения Крыма к Российской Федерации. У нас другая точка зрения. Мы считаем, что мы провели референдум в строгом соответствии с международным правом, с уставом Организации Объединенных Наций. Для нас, для Российской Федерации, этот вопрос закрыт. Первое. Второе, что касается каких-то компроматов. Вот я слышал об этом. Якобы мы собирали компромат на господина Трампа, когда он приезжал в Москву. Уважаемые коллеги, когда господин Трамп приезжал в Москву, я даже не знал, что он там находится. Я с уважением отношусь к президенту Трампу, как главе американского государства. Но когда он приезжал в качестве бизнесмена, я даже не знал, что он находится в Москве. Вот на Петербургский экономический форум в Петербург приехало свыше 500 американских бизнесменов, причем самого высокого ранга. Я даже по фамилии их не вспомню. И что вы думаете, мы по каждому из них организуем оперативную работу, собираем какой-то компромат? Больше ерунды трудно себе представить. Просто трудно себе представить. Выбросите, пожалуйста, эту шелуху из головы.
And I have to say, if they had it, it would have been out long ago. And if anybody watched Peter Strzok testify over the last couple of days, and I was in Brussels watching it. It was a disgrace to the FBI. It was a disgrace to our country. And you would say that was a total witch hunt. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Well, we are live in the newsroom here at Fox 5 DC watching the end of this Helsinki summit along with you guys. So if you're on with us, that was President Trump and Putin in the highly anticipated summit meeting in Finland. And you can see the reporters all getting ready now to do their live shots back to their networks. All of those American reporters there, you can see them in a line. John Roberts on the far left, reporting back to Fox News Channel. But if you were on with us, let us know what you thought of that. Let us know what you think. We've been tweeting about it and kind of hearing both sides. In the end, it sounds a little bit like who's against whom kind of a reaction for some of their comments. Both presidents speaking, of course, the big topic being the meddling in the United States election in 2016. A lot of questions about that. We're going to have more from this feed as much as we can get it. This is the biggest kind of story this morning, and we're going to keep it on with you as long as we have coverage of it, as long as we have something. We want to keep you over internationally. So we will be jumping in and out and giving you the latest live stories from in our newsroom. Also, some other cool stories that have popped from the weekend. Anything that we get in live, we're going to bring to you here on Fox 5 Live on our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us. If you're on our website, if you're on our channel, be part of our stream. Let us know where you're watching from, and feel free to comment any questions, any thoughts. I'm Molly Nevola inside the newsroom. We'll stay here for just a little bit and kind of see what happens. I have another quick camera right here of some other leaders and Secret Service members here kind of gathering. And you can kind of see the reaction and fallout from this summit. So we'll be listening in to see what we can glean from this, and then we'll bring you to some other live events, some top stories of the day as we switch gears and get ready for the All-Star game tomorrow. There'll be a news conference later today on that here in DC. Thank you again for hanging out with us and for watching today on this Monday. Happy Monday. July 16th, going into the second half of this beautiful month. A lot of stuff happening this half of the month with the World Cup now over, going more into international topics like this one, and then the All-Star Game, another great sort of national coming together here in Washington that will have more coverage for you on that tonight and tomorrow. So stay with us here. We're going to be bouncing around and just seeing what we can grab for you as far as live events go.
They're doing a live shot. It's over here.
Yeah, he's talking, he's what he's interested now. And the mic is three things at that meeting. Putin gave up nothing apart from saying, yeah, maybe sensible questions. People as Oh, yes. No, yes.
Киберобеспечения, обеспечения кибербезопасности. И хочу отметить, что наши специальные службы работают весьма успешно. Говорили, конечно, и о региональных кризисах, в том числе по Сирии. Что касается Сирии, то решение задачи установления в мире, в этой стране мира и согласия могло бы стать образцом успешной совместной работы. Россия и Соединенные Штаты, безусловно, могут взять на себя лидерство. Для результативного сотрудничества по сирийскому сюжету у нас есть все необходимые слагаемые. Упомяну, что российские и американские военные приобрели полезный опыт взаимодействия и координации, наладили оперативные каналы связи, что позволило не допустить опасных инцидентов и непредсказуемого столкновения на поле боя, в воздухе и на земле. Хотел бы также отметить, что после завершения окончательного разгрома террористов на юго-западе Сирии, в так называемой южной зоне, ситуация на голландских высотах должна быть приведена в полное соответствие с соглашением 1974 года о разъединении израильских и сирийских войск. Это позволит вернуть спокойствие на Голаны, восстановить режим прекращения огня между Сирийской Арабской Республикой и Израилем, надежно обеспечить безопасность государства Израиль. Обратили внимание на важность добросовестной реализации минских договоренностей. Соединенные Штаты могли бы решительнее настаивать на этом и настраивать украинское руководство на эту работу. Особое внимание уделили экономике. Интерес к сотрудничеству со стороны деловых кругов обеих стран, безусловно, есть. Американская бизнес-делегация была одной из самых крупных. Расчистить все завалы, это невозможно было сделать на первой встрече такой. Но, считаю, сделали первый важный шаг в этом направлении. В заключение хотел бы отметить, что созданию рабочей атмосферы переговоров во многом способствовали наши финские хозяева. Благодарны руководству Финляндии.
Then we're going to have to find ways to cooperate in pursuit of shared interests. Too often in both recent past and long ago, we have seen the consequences when diplomacy is left on the table. We have also seen the benefits of cooperation. In the last century, our nations fought alongside one another in the Second World War. Even during the tensions of the Cold War, when the world looked much different than it does today, or the media, or Democrats who want to do nothing but resist and obstruct. Constructive dialogue between the United States and Russia affords the opportunity to open new pathways toward peace and stability in our world. I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics. It is to protect our citizens from this global menace. Last year, we told Russia about a planned attack in St. Petersburg, and they were able to stop it cold. They found them, they stopped them, there was no doubt about it. I appreciated President Putin's phone call afterwards to thank me. I also emphasized the importance of placing pressure on Iran to halt its nuclear ambitions and to stop its campaign of violence throughout the area, throughout the Middle East. As we discussed at length, the crisis in Syria is a complex one. Cooperation between our two countries has the potential to save hundreds of thousands of lives. I also made clear that the United States will not allow Iran to benefit from our successful campaign against ISIS. We have just about eradicated ISIS in the area. We also agreed that representatives from our national security councils will meet to follow up on all of the issues we addressed today and to continue the progress we have.
1999 года. Договор о взаимной помощи по уголовным делам. И этот договор работающий. Кстати говоря, эффективно работающий.
Creating safety for Israel is something that both President Putin and I would like to see very much. One little thing I might add to that is the helping of people, because you have such horrible. Okay.
The final question from the United States will go to Jonathan Lemire from the AP.
Want President Trump to take a page out of President Reagan's playbook when he used a stopover in Helsinki on his way to a summit in 1988 with Soviet leader Gorbachev to press the issue of human rights.
What are we to think of the continued suppression of those who wish to practice their religious beliefs? There remains no reason why the Soviet Union cannot release all people still in jail for expression of political or religious belief.
But Trump's critics fear human rights will get pushed to the side in the coming talks.
Could be quite unpredictable, but so far President Trump has made it quite clear that he doesn't really see any human rights problems in Russia, and that's very troubling.
According to the U.S. State Department, Russia is currently holding more than 150 political and religious prisoners. Last year, the country outlawed the Jehovah's Witnesses religion, and for the last few months has rounded up 20 of them under the charge of extremism. A statement from Jehovah's Witnesses saying, in part, peaceful, law-abiding citizens are being prosecuted as if they were terrorists, simply for reading the Bible, singing, and praying with fellow worshipers.
Thank you.
The State Department will not say if Trump will or will not raise the issue of human rights with Putin, but stands by its statement released last month saying, "We call on Russia to release all those identified as political or religious prisoners immediately." Analysts say the overarching issue here is that human rights may just be a low priority.
For this administration, religious freedom is important, but it is not a paramount concern when there are burning geopolitical issues such as Syria, such as Ukraine, arms control.
Analysts point out that political and religious prisoners tend to be pawns in negotiations, but activists are hoping that the State Department's edict has more bite than bark. In New York, Lauren Green, Fox News.
You know how fast you were just going, ma'am?
I'm so sorry, I'm late for work.
So you could go over 80 miles per hour?
Roswell police tell us the traffic pullover on Highway 92 in April occurred when a police squad car was passed at a high rate of speed by the car driven by Sarah Webb. Officers Courtney Brown and Christy Wilson had the discretion of citing Webb for speeding or arresting her for speeding and the more serious reckless conduct. Body cam video shows they based their decision on the flip of an electronic coin app.
Head or tail. Okay. This is tail, right?
The heads or tail decision went against Webb, who was arrested on the more serious charge of reckless conduct and speeding.
I'm appalled that a police officer would trivialize the arrest decision-making process with a coin flip.
Chief Rusty Grant told me after the Fulton County Solicitor General's office learned of the circumstances, prosecutors dropped the charges against Miss Webb. Her car had already been confiscated, and she'd spent a few hours in jail based on the electronic coin toss by the officers.
This behavior of these two officers is not indicative of the behavior of other Roswell police officers.
Officers Brown and Wilson, who are in their 20s and have been on the force about 2 years, are on paid administrative leave.
During that time, they're accountable. They have to call in every morning, every afternoon. They have to get permission to leave and go somewhere during that time.
The chief says he's had press inquiries from all over the country and apologized to other officers who might get this response.
Hey, did you flip a coin to decide to write me a citation or not?
That's the mom standing right there. The baby is right in front of her. See it laying on the ground?
It was quite the surprise for visitors today.
To be honest, first I thought it was a rock, and then I saw it move, and I thought, okay, that's a baby.
If there was such a thing as a cuteness meter, this little creature would have it pegged.
All the kids are excited to see a baby.
But nobody can be more excited than the zoo staff.
41 years since this zoo had a baby southern white rhinoceros, so this is a huge deal for us.
And this is the second one to be born in just 2 weeks. The first one born in a special enclosure off exhibit on July 2nd. The sudden flood of newborns brought on by a bull rhino appropriately named Stormy.
But when it rains, it pours, is all I can say.
Although it took Stormy a while to live up to his name.
He wasn't really showing us that he knew what he was doing, so we had actually given up on him. I mean, 4 years later, we're still waiting, and then all of a sudden, apparently he did do the job while we weren't watching.
When they confirmed the first cow was expecting, they got her off exhibit to have the baby. This one caught them a bit off guard. We
would have liked to have had a little bit more of a controlled situation, but we're really not worried about it. If you watched her, you see she's hovering over that calf. She's not going to let anything happen to it.
For zoo visitors, it is a special treat.
Absolutely never expected to see a baby rhino, particularly in North Carolina, at Asheboro.
It's nice to be able to see new life come to the zoo and that the animals the population's growing and it's healthy.
So from 4th Street down here to 16th Street, dogs are allowed on the beaches here in Cocoa, even if the sign says no dogs allowed.
Dogs are part of the family, so now you can bring all your family to the beach.
Thanks to an ordinance passed in May. The first day it took effect, Gail Graham and 2-year-old Gatsby are ready to go.
It's great. It's a beautiful day. And I'm going to take him for a walk in the surf here.
But they can only be out here during the hours of 6 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 9 p.m. And only from 4th Street south to Robert Mersch Memorial Park on 16th Street.
I'm glad I've got him with me today. He likes the beach.
And it's only for a 6-month trial period.
I love to see dogs on the beach, and as long as their owners are responsible and follow the law, then I don't see there's any problem with it.
Back in May, those who spoke out against the ordinance, worrying of messes left behind by the animals, but these pet lovers don't think that'll be a problem.
You know, at the end of the day, a lot of it, I think, comes down to having, responsible dog owners. You know, folks that actually, they pick up after their pets. You know, they don't make a nuisance of their pets, that they don't bother other people.
And dogs don't throw cigarette butts on the beach. They don't leave beer cans, and I don't have any problem at all with dogs on the beach.
Local resident Paul Evans was surfing the first day of the new ordinance, but didn't mind the dogs swimming nearby.
I can't speak for other surfers, of course, but I don't see a problem.
The only people that I've talked to that are against dogs on the beach are the people that look for the turtle eggs in the morning.
Those eggs taped off with warnings posted. The city says they'll pull this ordinance if they find a problem. And the ordinance also says that dogs have to be on a leash no shorter than 6 feet. Reporting in Cocoa Beach, Heather Gustafson, Fox 35 News.
This officer protected me. He didn't know me, but he protected me anyway, so I felt I should show some appreciation.
Appreciation and support poured into the Weymouth Police Department Sunday from early afternoon and into the night.
If I had more money, it would have bought more flowers.
All to show love for Officer Michael Chesna, killed in the line of duty Sunday morning. From children to senior citizens and even Patriots owner Robert Kraft.
Just terrible. Just, oh, sad. Sad. Heartbroken for his 2 kids.
The support from this community began early Sunday, with officers lining the streets for a salute to Officer Chesna as his body was transported from South Shore Hospital. An emotional procession stretching across several towns from Weymouth to Boston.
It was overwhelming. So, yeah, it was overwhelming. It's just very sad.
Weymouth Police Chief Richard Grimes says Officer Chesna was an Army veteran before he joined the police force. He now leaves behind 2 young children and a wife.
He was just a great family man. He was a great officer.
Now a black bunting drapes across the police station as a sign of mourning, only to draw this community closer together.
It's all just trying to help. They help our community, so now it's time for us to help them.
Yeah, just visiting. We arrived in Seattle 2 hours ago, went for a burger, came to the beach, and then, tragedy on the beach.
Travelers from London became first responders, helping to rescue 5 children struggling to stay above water at Discovery Park Friday afternoon.
One of them was just terrified. A girl I was bringing in was just completely terrified, and she was kind of throwing up as well. I don't think she could think straight. She was saying, you need to call 911.
The 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl, just 10 to 11 years old, were part of a day camp. The children were among more than 100 other kids swimming in the water, enjoying the beautiful weather. 22-year-old Hamish Ray described how the children desperately clung to him and his friends as they brought them to shore.
Jack had 2 which were pulling him down, and he was in danger of then being drowned by them. And I took 1 off him, and then we tried to each go with 1, because 2 is, I don't know if there's a method to swim with 2 safely, but we couldn't do it.
Seattle Fire says this is a good safety reminder for all adults and kids alike.
Even though it's warm outside, the waters are still cold, so you may not want to stay in it for too long, longer than your body would allow.
Hamish and his friends are just grateful to have been at the right place at the right time.
Oh, hey, it's Brandon. I was just calling somebody to let them know.
This is the man suspected of stealing a Metro fire engine and taking it across 5 counties before CHP got him into custody in Butte County. Local resident Javier Carmona captured part of the pursuit as it passed him along Highway 70. CHP got the suspect to stop after laying down some spike strips. Following the arrest, the suspect later tried to get away, actually getting out of the patrol car, but he didn't get very far. We caught up with the suspect after the pursuit ended.
Why did you do that?
Because we were trying to get some help.
Help how? And you thought that was the
Like,
best way to do it?
Get us to a hospital, get us to a psych ward, get us some shoes. We're burdened out here, so we just had to play a game and want to play a game.
Where did you get
Let's ride.
Was there a grass fire going on? How were you able to get access to it?
We just hopped in the window. The window was wide open.
What were you thinking, man?
Well, we didn't hop in the window. The door was wide open.
Okay.
We thought Hollywood. All right, here you go. You want to drive? Take off.
And the whole time, so you're trying to get help by stealing a fire engine? That's
No,
how you're going to get help?
We told, because we don't, we just try to get to the hospital, but we forgot what happened. How,
This was his passenger riding in the fire engine with him.
He banged the window out and told me he'd kill me if he couldn't get mental health help. I had gotten him to throw the axe out the window, and then he hit me with a mag light in the forehead.
So this guy kidnapped you, Candace?
Yes, sir.
How did he do that?
He had an axe.
But CHP say she was not the victim of a kidnapping.
We've found out that we actually had a task force officer that was there when the fire truck got stolen and watched it drive down about a mile, and the driver, the male, honked the horn twice in front of a house, stopped, a female ran out of the house and jumped into the passenger seat of the fire truck. So he picked her up.
As far as the motive for stealing the fire engine, were drugs, alcohol, or his mental state play a factor?
We're still looking into that. All of those indications are there.
Officials say this all began when the man allegedly got behind the wheel of a fire engine, which was in Rio Linda for a vegetation fire. All in all, no serious injuries.
That was our biggest concern, was that nobody became injured, and mainly for the rest of the community.
Take a look at this video released by the Miami Beach Police Department. This is a storage unit of a Miami Beach condominium. Inside, police say they found 28 containers of gasoline, sulfur powder, and potassium nitrate. Cops say this belonged to a man who had anti-Semitic views and wanted to kill Jews. We spoke to a friend of his for 10 years.
I actually do security cameras, and I did a security cameras at a business that he has in Doral.
And what did he tell you about Jews?
He said he didn't like Jews. He was a Nazi.
This is Walter Stopler, who cops say wanted to burn down this Miami Beach condominium because he wanted to kill all the Jews.
We've learned that he was facing an upcoming eviction. Yesterday, our officers, our detectives from our intelligence unit, intercepted him with 2 filled gasoline containers.
Cops say Stolper lived in this building off 56th and Collins.
We learned an additional 8 containers filled with gasoline were dumped down the 15th floor trash chute.
Cops say Stolper was putting his plan into action.
We firmly believe that we intercepted a potential crisis here in this building.
And I heard about what he did yesterday with the gasoline, and it's frightening. It's frightening that, somebody could, you have a neighbor living in something like this.
Residents like Raphael Solar stunned.
Crazy, absolutely crazy.
You also found disturbing reading material, right?
That's correct. Inside of the individual's unit was a swastika, was Nazi reading material. This is a troubled individual, someone who we will be working closely with the Miami-Dade State's Attorney's Office to ensure a successful prosecution.
When did you call the police?
Yesterday morning.
Why?
Because it bothered a comment that he made to me. It actually bothered me.
What was the comment?
That he was going to burn the building down with a bunch of Jews in it.
Amber Hornbeck is 31 weeks along with her 3rd child.
My husband is Michael Hornbeck, and he's a chaplain.
Michael will not be there for the birth of their son, but Amber says it's easier that way.
I actually asked him not to come. I have other 2 children. One is 6 and another one is going to be 4 this month. And I don't think they could handle daddy coming and leaving again.
One of the many tough choices military moms and spouses have to make while their partners are on deployment. That's where Operation Homefront steps in.
Operation Homefront is a national nonprofit, and our mission is to serve military families.
The organization hosted a star-spangled baby shower on Saturday for dozens of new and expecting moms who either serve in the military themselves or are married to someone who does.
Our military moms are in a pretty unique situation. A lot of times it's just them and their spouse, and then half the time their spouse is deployed or away at training. So we really wanted to show them that there's support for them here. And it might not be their core group, but the community cares about them, and we just wanted to show them that.
The moms were introduced to a variety of available resources to help through birth and beyond. And everyone took home a gift basket, complete with 2 baby blankets and books to read their little ones. In Plant City, Mariah Harrison, Fox 13 News.
Today, Joe the plumber is more Joe the family and businessman.
Sissy gets in the middle. Ladies first.
44-year-old Samuel Joe Wurzelbacher is now remarried with 4 children.
We kept on tossing football.
In the front yard of his Ohio home, Joe points out where his sudden launch to fame all began.
And that's when Barack Obama was standing right here.
On a Sunday morning in 2008, Joe was tossing a football with his oldest son when then presidential candidate Barack Obama dropped by his neighborhood to campaign.
Secret Service obviously patted me down. I walked up to him and I told him, hey, listen, I'm thinking about buying a company.
Your new tax plan is going to tax me more, isn't it?
Joe figured it was the perfect time to ask Obama about his proposed plan to increase taxes.
My thinking was when Barack Obama was speaking then, if you work hard, we're going to penalize you. So that's why I essentially asked that question. I was not persuaded in any way, shape, or form.
All right, guys, I got to get out of here.
Cameras captured the encounter, and overnight, Joe the plumber became the face of everyday Americans with similar concerns about taxes and jobs.
The conversation I had with Joe the plumber.
Joe the plumber.
Joe the plumber.
Joe the plumber.
Joe's story was picked up by John McCain's campaign and used as a political prop against Obama.
Of course they wanted to use me. The only reason why I even came out as for John McCain is the simple fact that I didn't want Barack Obama in office.
After McCain's loss, Joe wrote a book.
Me or I think about something.
Had a stint as a war correspondent and ran for Congress but lost. Today, Joe still works with his hands, but he says he has a new calling.
You have the handle
to protect students.
And then if you try to open the door.
He's an executive for a company that makes a simple steel barricade designed to prevent shooters from opening classroom doors.
19 years since Columbine, and most schools still don't have security in place to protect the kids. So I've decided to leave politics behind.
Joe says he never asked to be a known person.
Oh, go boy.
And actually finds his sudden fame ironic.
I didn't seek out Barack Obama. He came to my neighborhood. You know, I think Joe the plumber, in a good way, shows that God's got a sense of humor.
There were some bumps in the road, including accusations of racism and an unsuccessful lawsuit he filed against the state of Ohio alleging privacy violations in an attempt to smear him. But Joe doesn't have regrets.
Since then, I got a beautiful wife. I got 3 brand new kids out of it. I mean, I couldn't be happier.
Joe tells us he turned down some opportunities to perhaps cash in on his sudden fame because he says they would have compromised his beliefs. He wanted to maintain respect from his family and friends.
Most of the time I'd be nice.
You take it easy on me?
Yeah.
Lining up across the table from Dick Hicks is anything but your friendly game of ping pong.
Recreational table tennis in your basement is to serious table tennis as shooting baskets in your driveway is to playing in the NBA.
And in that world of serious table tennis, Dick is a U.S. Hall of Famer.
I've won over 70 national titles and just the one world championship.
Just a few weeks ago, at the age of 80, Dick earned that first world title. What might be most impressive, though, isn't the medal itself, but Dick's come-from-behind effort to capture it.
I started poorly. I lost the first 2 games. I won the 3rd game, and I was behind in the 4th game, and finally tied it up and won 12-10, and then I won the final game in a hard match.
This civil engineer also has more than 30 state titles to his name.
I'm probably the oldest that ever won a state championship.
And aspects of his game are even stronger now than they were when he started playing competitively at 19, something I learned firsthand.
I think I can attack a little better, and I can make more different shots, do more different things than I could early on, but it's necessary because the competition is getting better all the time.
So that means Dick will keep getting better too, practicing 2 or 3 times a week at the Table Tennis Club of Indy to be sure he defends that world title.
The only thing he could do better is do it again.
From Indy's East Side, Lara Overton, Indy Sports Central.
So that is some of our quite heartwarming stories of the day, guys. Today on this July 16th, happy Monday, we're going into a very exciting day here in D.C. as we get ready for the All-Star Game tomorrow. In fact, if you're local to our area, DMV area, we're doing all of our morning coverage from Nationals Park where that game is going to be held. So our morning team will be down there anchoring the show tomorrow morning from the park and kind of getting in the whole scene and talking to people on the red carpet and celebrities and athletes who are in town. So a lot of exciting stuff in the sports world. Couple that up with all the stuff that's been happening in politics. President Trump meeting with Vladimir Putin this morning in a highly anticipated press conference from Finland. I know there were a lot of, just talking to some of my contacts and talking to people that were there, Helsinki, full of people on both sides, protesters alike, tons of media coverage, a lot of people. It is a big deal. And I know some people in Finland weren't necessarily quite happy with the fact that they were hosting this there, but that's what they did, and we've been kind of getting in various clips and footage from that meeting this morning. Now, they had a few words, Trump and Putin, to exchange together in a quick meeting before this actual conference. But since that is kind of the main news today, and other than that, we're looking at just a hot, humid day here in DC. We'll be getting ready for any breaking news that we have to share with you, and we'll make sure that we get that out to you accordingly when that does come. But for now, we're kind of just looking around, talking to some people, looking to see what our reporters are getting into today, and then we'll be replaying that bilateral summit, that historic summit from Helsinki this morning. So in case you missed it, let's bring it back up to the top of President Trump speaking. I believe Putin spoke first. The dialogue was a little bit hard to hear with the audio because there is, of course, the translator, but President Trump spoke, and they went on to answer some questions from the media, from various people from the media in the audience. So we do want to play that out for you in case you missed it. And we're going to roll right to that. Hope that you enjoyed some of the interesting stories that we were able to bring you. Like I said, from some of our sister stations, various kind of feature-y type stories just to kind of set the mood of what was happening over the weekend and give you a little update on that. But yeah, the main story, let's go back over to Finland where this just happened moments ago. The historic summit from Helsinki 2018 is what they're calling it. We'll break in with anything that is pressing, anything else that kind of breaks on our end. But here is that replay from just a few moments ago.
Собирается вмешиваться в американские внутренние дела, в том числе выборный процесс. Какие-либо конкретные материалы, если они будут представлены, мы готовы вместе рассматривать. Например, в рамках рабочей группы по кибербезопасности, о создании которой мы говорили с президентом еще на встрече в Гамбурге. И, конечно, пора размораживать российско-американские связи по линии общественных организаций в культурно-гуманитарной сфере. Совсем недавно, вы знаете, у нас была американская делегация американских конгрессменов, но это воспринимается чуть ли не как историческое событие. А это должно быть рядовым текущим мероприятием. В этой связи мы высказали предложение президенту Соединенных Штатов подумать не только над практическими вопросами, но и над философией выстраивания двухсторонних отношений на долгосрочной перспективе. К такому процессу полезно было бы привлечь опыт экспертов, хорошо знающих историю, нюансы российско-американского взаимодействия. Идея в том, чтобы сформировать экспертный совет из влиятельных российских и американских политологов, ученых, бывших видных дипломатов и военных, который бы занялся поиском точек соприкосновения и осмыслением того, как вывести двустороннее сотрудничество на устойчивую позитивную траекторию. В целом, мы довольны нашей первой полномасштабной встречей. Напомню, что до этого мы только кратко общались на международных форумах. Мы хорошо поговорили с президентом Трампом. Надеюсь, стали лучше понимать друг друга. И я Дональду за это благодарен. Конечно, многочисленные проблемы остаются, и мы не смогли расчистить все завалы. Это невозможно было сделать на первой встрече такой. Но, считаю, сделали первый важный шаг в этом направлении. В заключение хотел бы отметить, что создание рабочей атмосферы переговоров во многом способствовали наши финские хозяева. Благодарны руководству Финляндии, финскому народу, жителям Хельсинки за то, что было сделано. Знаем, что мы доставили много неудобств жителям Хельсинки и приносим за это свои извинения. Благодарю вас.
Thank you. I have just concluded a meeting with President Putin on a wide range of critical issues for both of our countries. We had direct, open, deeply productive dialogue. Went very well. Before I begin, I want to thank President Niinisto of Finland for graciously hosting today's summit. President Putin and I were saying how lovely it was and what a great job they did. I also want to congratulate Russia and President Putin for having done such an excellent job in hosting the World Cup. It was really one of the best ever, and your team also did very well. It was a great job. I'm here today to continue the proud tradition of bold American diplomacy. From the earliest days of our republic, American leaders have understood that diplomacy and engagement is preferable to conflict and hostility. A productive dialogue is not only good for the United States and good for Russia, but it is good for the world. The disagreements between our two countries are well known, and President Putin and I discussed them at length today. But if we're going to solve many of the problems facing our world, then we're going to have to find ways to cooperate in pursuit of shared interests. Too often in both recent past and long ago, we have seen the consequences when diplomacy is left on the table. We have also seen the benefits of cooperation. In the last century, our nations fought alongside one another in the Second World War. Even during the tensions of the Cold War, when the world looked much different than it does today, the United States and Russia were able to maintain a strong dialogue. But our relationship has never been worse than it is now. However, that changed as of about 4 hours ago. I really believe that. Nothing would be easier politically than to refuse to meet, to refuse to engage, but that would not accomplish anything. As president, I cannot make decisions on foreign policy in a futile effort to appease partisan critics or the media or Democrats who want to do nothing but resist and obstruct. Constructive dialogue between the United States and Russia affords the opportunity to open new pathways toward peace and stability in our world. I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics. As president, I will always put what is best for America and what is best for the American people. During today's meeting, I addressed directly with President Putin the issue of Russian interference in our elections. I felt this was a message best delivered in person. Spent a great deal of time talking about it, and President Putin may very well want to address it, and very strongly, because he feels very strongly about it, and he has an interesting idea. We also discussed one of the most critical challenges facing humanity, nuclear proliferation. I provided an update on my meeting last month with Chairman Kim.
List goes to Jeff Mason from Reuters.
Thank you. Mr. President, you tweeted this morning that it's U.S. foolishness, stupidity, and the Mueller probe that is responsible for the decline in U.S. relations with Russia. Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular? And if so, what would you consider them that they are responsible for?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago. a long time, frankly, before I got to office. And I think we're all to blame. I think that the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia, and we're getting together, and we have a chance to do some great things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping. We have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that we can be working on. But I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. That was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily, and frankly, we beat her. And I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race. And it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it, but the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
For President Putin, if I could follow up as well, why should Americans and why should President Trump believe your statement that Russia did not intervene in the 2016 election, given the evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies have provided? And will you consider extraditing the 12 Russian officials that were indicted last week by a U.S. grand jury?
Well, I'm going to let the president answer the second part of that question. But as you know, the whole concept of that came up perhaps a little bit before, but it came out as a reason why the Democrats lost an election, which frankly, they should have been able to win because the Electoral College is much more advantageous for Democrats, as you know, than it is to Republicans. We won the Electoral College by a lot, 306 to 223, I believe, and that was a well-fought battle. We did a great job, and frankly, I'm going to let the president speak to the second part of your question. But just to say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion. I didn't know the president. There was nobody to collude with. There was no collusion with the campaign. And every time you hear all of these, 12 and 14, it's stuff that has nothing to do. And frankly, they admit these are not people involved in the campaign. But to the average reader out there, they're saying, well, maybe that does. It doesn't. And even the people involved, some perhaps told mis-stories, although in one case the FBI said there was no lie. There was no lie. Somebody else said there was. We ran a brilliant campaign, and that's why I'm president. Thank you.
По поводу того, кому верить и кому не верить, и можно ли вообще верить. Никому нельзя верить. С чего вы взяли, что президент Трамп мне доверяет, а я ему в полной степени доверяю? Он защищает интересы Соединенных Штатов Америки. Я защищаю интересы Российской Федерации. У нас есть совпадающие интересы, и мы исчем точки соприкосновения. У нас есть вопросы, в которых мы пока расходимся, и мы ищем варианты, как примирить эти расхождения, как сделать нашу работу конструктивной. Мы должны опираться не на сиюминутные политические интересы каких-то внутренних политических сил в наших странах, а на факты. Назовите мне хотя бы один факт, который говорит о каком-то сговоре в ходе предвыборной кампании в Соединенных Штатах. Это полный бред. Мы не были знакомы, президент только об этом сказал. То, что в российском обществе в ходе избирательной кампании в Соединенных Штатах сложилось определенное мнение в отношении кандидатов, но это само собой разумеется. Чего здесь необычного? Президент Трамп в качестве сегодняшний президент в качестве кандидата говорил о необходимости восстановления российско-американских отношений. Но, естественно, в российском обществе возникла симпатия к этому кандидату. И разные люди по-разному могли эту симпатию проявлять. Ну, разве это не естественно? Иметь симпатию к человеку, который хочет выстроить отношения с нашей страной. Нормально. Вот мы слышали обвинения в адрес фирмы «Конкорд». Насколько мне известно, эта фирма наняла адвокатов американских, и все обвинения в ее адрес рассыпаются в американском суде. Но вы посмотрите, что в судах американских происходит. Вот на что надо опираться, а не на слухи. Это первое. Второе, что касается вот этих 12 сотрудников якобы наших спецслужб. Я об этом ничего пока не знаю, мне нужно еще выяснить, о чем там идет речь. Значит, но президент поставил этот вопрос передо мной тоже. Что я могу сказать? Вот, мы в общем обсуждали, но вот что мне приходит в голову и что я могу предложить. У нас действует договор между Соединенными Штатами Америки и Российской Федерацией от 1999 года. Договор о взаимной помощи по уголовным делам. Этот договор работающий. Кстати говоря, эффективно работающий. Мы по запросам иностранных государств до сотни, 150 дел возбуждаем уголовно в России. Несколько лет назад наш бывший министр атомной промышленности был выдан Соединенными Штатами в Российскую Федерацию и был осужден российским судом. Это работающий договор. Этим договором предусмотрены определенные процедуры совместной работы. Мы можем предложить, чтобы соответствующая ваша комиссия, которая возглавляет спецпрокурор, фамилия, господин Миллер, значит, вот он может в рамках этого договора направить нам официальный запрос с целью провести допросы тех людей, которые он считает виновными в совершении каких-то правонарушений. Сотрудники нашей прокуратуры и следственных органов эти допросы могут провести и направить соответствующие материалы в Соединенные Штаты. Значит, более того, мы можем сделать и еще один шаг навстречу. Мы можем допустить официальных представителей Соединенных Штатов, в том числе этой комиссии, господина Миллера, присутствовать на этих допросах. Но тогда в этом случае мы, безусловно, будем ставить вопрос о том, чтобы эти действия были взаимными. Мы тогда будем ожидать от американской стороны, чтобы они допросили тех официальных лиц, в том числе представителей спецслужб Соединенных Штатов, которых мы подозреваем в совершении противоправных действий на территории Российской Федерации, в присутствии наших следователей. Что я имею в виду? Ну, известное дело фирмы Hermitage Capital, господина Браудера. По данным нашего следствия, группа лиц, деловые партнеры господина Браудера, незаконным образом заработали в России более $1,5 миллиарда. Не заплатили налоги ни в России, ни в Соединенных Штатах. Но деньги эти в Соединенные Штаты перевели. $400 миллионов направили на избирательную кампанию госпожи Клинтон. Это официальные данные, которые в их отчетах присутствуют. 400 миллионов направили. Но это их дело, они сделали, возможно, это легально. Но деньги получены нелегально. У нас есть основания полагать, что некоторые сотрудники спецслужб Соединенных Штатов сопровождали эти сделки незаконно. Но это вот только один шаг вперед. Но мы можем поговорить и о расширении нашего сотрудничества. Пожалуйста, варианты возможны, они предусмотрены в соответствующем межправительственном соглашении.
President Putin, did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Да, я хотел, чтобы он выиграл. Потому что он говорил о нормализации российско-американских отношений.
Продолжаем. Я думаю, вполне вопросы 3 может задать кто-то из российского пула. Давайте, Russia Today, вперед.
Спасибо большое. Добрый вечер. Меня зовут Илья Петренко. Как Дмитрий Сергеевич сказал, телеканал RT. First, a question for Mr. Trump in English. Mr. President, Would you please go into the details of possibly any specific arrangements for the U.S. to work together with Russia in Syria, if any of these kind of arrangements were made today or discussed? И если позволите, Владимир Владимирович, тоже вопрос на русском, поскольку сегодня несколько раз уже затрагивалась тема футбола, я на футбольном языке задам вопрос. Господин Помпео чуть ранее сказал, что когда разговор заходит о взаимодействии в Сирии, сейчас мяч на стороне России. Владимир Владимирович, это действительно так? И в таком случае, если да, как вы этим владением воспользовались? Спасибо. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll answer the first part of the question. We've worked with Israel long and hard for many years, many decades. I think we've never has any country been closer than we are. President Putin also is helping Israel, and we both spoke with Bibi Netanyahu, and they would like to do certain things with respect to Syria, having to do with the safety of Israel. So in that respect, we absolutely would like to work in order to help Israel, and Israel will be working with us. So both countries would work jointly. And I think that when you look at all of the progress that's been made in certain sections with the eradication of ISIS, we're about 98%, 99% there, and other things that have taken place that we've done, and that, frankly, Russia has helped us with in certain respects. But I think that working with Israel is a great thing, and creating safety for Israel is something that both President Putin and I would like to see very much. One little thing I might add to that is the helping of people, because you have such horrible, if you see, and I've seen reports and I've seen pictures, I've seen just about everything. And if we can do something to help the people of Syria get back into some form of shelter and on a humanitarian basis, and that's what the word was, really, a humanitarian basis. I think that both of us would be very interested in doing that, and we will do that. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, but for now, no specific agreements, for instance, between the militaries?
Well, our militaries do get along. In fact, our militaries actually have gotten along probably better than our political leaders for years, but our militaries do get along very well, and they do coordinate in Syria and other places. Okay? Thank you.
Мы говорили, я уже упоминал об этом, о сотрудничестве по гуманитарному направлению, в гуманитарной сфере. Только вчера я обсуждал этот вопрос с президентом Франции, господином Макроном, и мы с ним договорились о том, что мы и с европейскими странами, в том числе с Францией, активизируем эту работу. Мы со своей стороны готовы предоставлять военно-транспортные самолеты для гуманитарных грузов. И говорили об этом сегодня и с президентом Трампом, и думаю, что здесь есть над чем поработать. Что важно? Огромное количество беженцев сконцентрировано сейчас в приграничных с Сирией государствах, в Турции, в Ливане, в Иордании. Если мы окажем людям помощь для возвращения к родным очагам, то миграционное давление на страны Европейского Союза, на другие страны, оно многократно может уменьшиться. Считаю это чрезвычайно важным со всех точек зрения. И с гуманитарной, и вот с точки зрения решения проблем по беженцам. Ну а в целом, действительно, я согласен с президентом, наши военные работают весьма успешно друг с другом. Надеюсь, что им удастся договариваться так, как это было до сих пор. Мы будем работать и в астанинском формате, имею в виду Россию, Турцию и Иран. Я об этом сегодня тоже проинформировал Дональда. Но мы готовы сопрягать эти усилия с усилиями так называемой малой группы государств для того, чтобы процесс приобрел такой широкий характер и чтобы у нас были максимальные шансы на окончательный успех. Да, что касается того, что мяч на нашей стороне по Сирии, вот господин президент только что говорил о том, что мы закончили и успешно провели чемпионат мира по футболу. Вот насчет мяча, Господину президенту этот мяч передать, теперь мяч на его стороне. Тем более, что США должны будут проводить чемпионат мира 2026 года.
Thank you. That's right. Thank you very much. We do host it, and we hope we do as good a job. That's very nice. That will go to my son, Barron. We have no question. In fact, Melania, here you go. Okay.
The final question from the United States will go to Jonathan Lemire from the AP.
Thank you. Question for each president. President Trump, you first. Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe? My second question is, would you now, with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server. But I have confidence in both parties. I really believe that this will probably go on for a while, but I don't think it can go on without finding out what happened to the server. What happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentlemen that worked on the DNC? Where are those servers? They're missing. Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? 33,000 emails, gone, just gone. I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace that we can't get Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer. Okay? Thank you.
Позвольте мне добавить два слова. Я ведь тоже работал в разведке. И знаю, как составляются соответствующие досье. Just a moment. Это первое. Второе. Я считаю Россию демократическим государством. Надеюсь, вы не отказываете в этом и своей стране, Соединенным Штатам Америки. Соединенные Штаты демократическое государство? А если это так, то окончательный вывод в споре подобного рода может вынести только суд, а не оперативные службы. Вот компания, о которой я упоминал, Конкорд, одного из наших рестораторов, он ресторанным бизнесом занимается, обвиняют в вмешательстве. Но они не представляют российское государство. Даже если так, могу себе представить. Ну и что? Я уже приводил примеры. У вас есть много людей, в том числе с большим миллиардным состоянием. Господин Сорос, например. Тот везде вмешивается. Но это что? Это разве позиция американского государства? Нет. Это позиция частного лица. Вот так и здесь. Вот есть разбирательство в американском суде. Конечная инстанция всегда только суд. Пусть разбираются, посмотрим. Это касается частных только лиц, уже не государства. А последнее обвинение в отношении якобы сотрудников наших спецслужб, пожалуйста, я же на это ответил. Есть межправсоглашение. Присылайте, пожалуйста, официальный запрос. Пусть комиссия мира пришлет нам запрос. Мы проведем соответствующую работу и ответим. Можно и расширить это сотрудничество, я уже сказал, но тогда только на взаимной основе. Мы тогда тоже будем ждать от американской стороны доступа к тем лицам, которые мы считаем сотрудниками спецслужб. Давайте предметно обсуждать и не использовать российско-американские отношения в качестве разменной карты во внутриполитической американской борьбе.
And a question for President Putin. Thank you. Two questions for you, sir. Can you tell me what President Trump may have indicated to you about officially recognizing Crimea as part of Russia? And then secondly, sir, does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
Значит, президента Трампа позиция по Крыму известна, и он ее придерживается. Он говорит о незаконности присоединения Крыма к Российской Федерации. У нас другая точка зрения. Мы считаем, что мы провели референдум в строгом соответствии с международным правом, с уставом Организации Объединенных Наций. Для нас, для Российской Федерации, этот вопрос закрыт. Все. Первое. Второе, что касается каких-то компроматов. Вот я слышал об этом. Якобы мы собирали компромат на господина Трампа, когда он приезжал в Москву. Уважаемый коллега, когда господин Трамп приезжал в Москву, я даже не знал, что он там находится. Я с уважением отношусь к президенту Трампу, как к главе американского государства. Но когда он приезжал в качестве бизнесмена, я даже не знал, что он находится в Москве. Вот на Петербургский экономический форум в Петербург приехало свыше 500 американских бизнесменов, причем самого высокого ранга. Я даже по фамилии их не вспомню. И что вы думаете, мы по каждому из них организуем оперативную работу и собираем какой-то компромат? Больше ерунды трудно себе представить. Просто трудно себе представить. Выбросите, пожалуйста, эту шелуху из головы.
And I have to say, if they had it, it would have been out long ago. And if anybody watched Peter Strzok testify over the last couple of days, and I was in Brussels watching it, it was a disgrace to the FBI, it was a disgrace to our country, and you would say that was a total witch hunt. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So they still want to ask about Husseini? I don't know. Police. We'll see. A lot has happened since then.
Hi there. Hey, sir. Okay. Well, you heard it. Hey, Ouija, mic check 1 2 3 4 5. Mic check 1 2 3.
All right, guys, well, we're back in the newsroom here, tracking, of course, the very highly anticipated summit from this morning in Helsinki, Finland. We just played that out for you a couple of times, so if you're just joining us on the stream, you can kind of scroll back and go over to that. Again, that was sort of our main top of the day sort of story. We're going to flash over, though, now to a live event. Vice President Pence here in D.C., he was speaking at the Department of Commerce this morning. He was actually delivering remarks and having sort of a briefing with employees there. Now he'll be speaking alongside Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross right here in D.C. from the department, again, after meeting with the employees of the department. So we do have a bump shot up of that right now. We're going to throw you over there because that's coming up shortly. And we'll pull down sort of the sound here from Finland, which was what we focused on this morning. But in other DC news, guys, we're very much anticipating the Home Run Derby tonight from Nationals Park and the All-Star Game tomorrow. So lots of baseball, sports, a lot of celebrities in town for that. A big sports week for DC. Awesome, bringing in the tourism, bringing in business from all over, really, the nation. And later today, if we get this in, I'll see, we might be able to go over to the press club where the commissioner, MLB Commissioner Robert Manfred Jr. is going to be speaking about the State of America's game, which is baseball. I don't quite see that coming in. It was supposed to be around this hour. So I'll be looking out for that just in case. But for now, let's go over to the stage kind of podium area where Vice President Pence will be up next speaking with Secretary Wilbur Ross. That's coming up very shortly. Other than that, guys, any other live stuff we have for you, we'll bring that to you here on Fox 5 Live from our newsroom.
Activists want President Trump to take a page out of President Reagan's playbook when he used a stopover in Helsinki on his way to his summit in 1988 with Soviet leader Gorbachev to press the issue of human rights.
What are we to think of the continued suppression of those who wish to practice their religious beliefs? There remains no reason why the Soviet Union cannot release all people still in jail for expression of political or religious belief.
But Trump's critics fear human rights will get pushed to the side in the coming talks.
Could be quite unpredictable, but so far President Trump has made it quite clear that he doesn't really see any human rights problems in Russia, and that's very troubling.
According to the U.S. State Department, Russia is currently holding more than 150 political and religious prisoners. Last year, the country outlawed the Jehovah's Witnesses religion, and for the last few months has rounded up 20 of them under the charge of extremism. A statement from Jehovah's Witnesses saying, in part, peaceful, law-abiding citizens are being prosecuted as if they were terrorists, simply for reading the Bible, singing, and praying with fellow worshipers.
Thank you.
The State Department will not say if Trump will or will not raise the issue of human rights with Putin, but stands by its statement released last month saying, "We call on Russia to release all those identified as political or religious prisoners immediately." Analysts say the overarching issue here is that human rights may just be a low priority.
For this administration, religious freedom is important, but it is not a paramount concern when there are burning geopolitical issues such as Syria, such as Ukraine, arms control.
Analysts point out that political and religious prisoners tend to be pawns in negotiations, but activists are hoping that the State Department's edict has more bite than bark. In New York, Lauren Green, Fox News.
You know how fast you were just going, ma'am?
I'm so sorry, I'm late for work.
So you could go over 80 miles per hour?
Roswell police tell us the traffic pullover on Highway 92 in April occurred when a police squad car was passed at a high rate of speed by the car driven by Sarah Webb. Officers Courtney Brown and Christy Wilson had the discretion of citing Webb for speeding or arresting her for speeding and the more serious reckless conduct. Body cam video shows they based their decision on the flip of an electronic coin app.
Head or tail. Okay.
This is tail, right?
The heads or tail decision went against Webb, who was arrested on the more serious charge of reckless conduct and speeding.
I'm appalled that a police officer would trivialize the
All right, guys, we're going to change gears a little bit and take you up to New York, where there is a press conference right now about a lawsuit involving the Kushner Companies. It has to do with some tenants who were in a condo conversion, a building in Williamsburg in Brooklyn, New York, and they say that they were forced out. It has to do, again, with the company's conversion of these luxury condos, and they're located in Brooklyn. So right now, this sort of press conference is going on about the lawsuit. More details in this press conference. Let's check it out.
This battle is happening in real time, and so we must have a real-time approach to it. We fought crime in this city by having real-time mechanisms. We need to use the same methods that we use to stop grand larceny of property. We need to use that method to stop the larceny of a person's home. It is happening every day, and not enough is being done. So we want to thank Jack Lester, the legal counsel here, and the Housing Rights Initiative for this important agenda. Kushner may be the popular name that attracted everyone to this issue in the limelight, but there are more names who are not being mentioned and are being used every day to go through this city and displacing tenant by illegal means. And we're hoping by using this name in Kushner's Companies as a method to wake us up and finally realize that government has dropped the ball. And the price of dropping the ball is causing countless number of tenants to lose their home and to live in unsafe environments as we have this conversation. And so this is an important initiative. And neighbors in Brownsville, Bedford-Stuyvesant, East New York, Crown Heights have all been impacted by this, and all over the city, South Jamaica, Queens. and other areas where you see development is taking place. They've been living through the threats of eviction, deliberate undertaking, unmitigated constructions to intimidate landlords and owners not following regulations on sanitation, rodent control, and heating, failing to maintain apartments in a state of good repair, bringing tenants to a level of frustration of throwing up their hands and leaving. The old methodology and ways that we monitor this system is outdated because the profit margin is so large. When you can displace a tenant who's paying $1,000 of rent and get a new tenant that will pay $3,000 of rent, that profit margin is so high that unscrupulous landlords have factored in, so what if they get a small fine of doing something illegal? We must combat this in a real-time processing, and just as we have those who commit robberies walk a perk walk, there needs to be landlords who are walking perk walks, and our district attorneys throughout the city must utilize existing laws on the book to stop some of the actions. We already have laws on the books for arson. We have laws on the books for criminal mischief. We have laws on the books for endangering the welfare of a child. If you have an intentional action that allows asbestos and other dangerous material to be in a building where a child is, then someone should be arrested for that, not only given a small fine. So today we're joining Housing Rights Initiative, a nonprofit watchdog group, and calling out Kushner Companies for their egregious violation of the law and harassing tenants. This organization has put in place the movement on several lawsuits. This is the most recent lawsuit of clear actions of attempting to circumvent the rights of everyday tenants to exist in their property. During my 5 years in Borough Hall, this is the #1 issue that we receive hundreds of calls about illegally being displaced and forcibly being displaced and harassed by unscrupulous landlords. We must institute a CompStat model to monitor in real time and identify those landlords who are using mechanisms to displace tenants. If we don't do that, by the time we catch up to the behavior of these landlords,
All right, guys, switching you over to a surprise live feed that we just got in right here, the status hearing for accused Parkland shooter Nikolas Cruz. We've seen him in the court multiple times now already, but often these kind of come up when we haven't really heard that they will happen. This is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so we'll be able to listen in to see sort of what the status is on this trial as it moves forward, or as they kind of set the dates for all the next steps of this trial. So let's listen in.
you're presiding, be seated and remain quiet, please.
Okay. Why don't we have all of the lawyers who are going to be arguing for the various sides to announce your presence for the record? By the way, we're on the case of the state of Florida versus Nikolas Cruz for various motions. Do all want? We can start with whoever. Why don't you go ahead, State.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Stephen Klinger on behalf of the state.
Joel Silverstone on behalf of the state.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Melissa McNeil on behalf of Mr. Cruz.
David Frankel on behalf of the Cruz.
Okay.
Tanya McElroy on behalf of some of the media interveners.
Okay.
Allison Lovely on behalf of other media interveners.
Okay. Thank you all for being here.
Get one more.
Good afternoon,
I'm
Judge.
sorry.
That's okay. Deborah Klauber from Halifax for Pettis Schwalm on behalf of the school board.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. I'm going to start just in order of the pleadings that were, the order that they were filed. First would be the motion to preserve the rough field notes of police personnel filed by the defense on June 15th. Does the defense have any testimony or evidence or argument that you wish to present in support of your motion, this particular motion?
Judge, we stand on our motion in terms of the law and what we're requesting. We're not actually requesting a copy of the rough notes.
Okay.
We're asking simply the preservation of the notes, which is within the court's discretion to request and order the state to do. At this point, we don't even have all of the police reports in the case, so we may be requesting the rough notes in lieu of the police reports if some of those officers do not intend to write reports. So we are requesting the court order the state of Florida to preserve all rough notes and field notes or any notes that were written by any law enforcement officers that were involved in this case. That's what we have in terms of the argument on that issue.
Thank you, Judge. Judge, we object to the motion. Counsel's basis for writing the motion comes off of the case of, I get organized, Vancas, V-A-N-C-A-S versus State, 377 Southern 2nd, 1000. Your Honor, that case was decided in 1979. The court had decided that the video in that case did not need to be preserved. They went up to the appellate court. The appellate court agreed with the judge's ruling, but they said, but by the way, you know what, you could have preserved it if you wanted to. Well, Judge, that's 1979. In 1989, in re-amendments of Florida Rule of Criminal Procedure 3.220, which was decided on May 3rd, 1989, and I have a copy for counsel and for the court, if I may approach. The Florida Supreme Court amended the Florida Rules of Criminal Procedure, and if you look at page 4 of the Westlaw notes, or the page numbering at the bottom, that is when the Supreme Court added in the sentence that said, but shall not include the notes in which such reports are compiled. So it's the state's position that the case law that the defense was relying on in order for the court to enter such an order has, for the most part, now been handled by the Rules of Criminal Procedure, where it is no longer necessary, or those notes do not need to be turned over. In the motion, defendant makes some statements. He says that they say the disclosure of material information intended to make the guilt of the defendant. Well, there is nothing to say that that is what's in the notes. And we are well aware of our discovery obligations. We continue to turn over discovery. If you were to come up with the purpose of having all these notes and other paperwork saved, it would be voluminous and it would be unmanageable. And in this case, there seems to be a tendency to want to think that this case is somehow different from all the other cases in the courtroom. It is in the courthouse. It is not. The defendant is afforded the same criminal rights as any other defendant in this courthouse, and there is no need for the preservation of notes. You would not even be able to, the effort and time it would take to review them, and also handwritten notes, there could be shortcuts. You have no idea what is in them. I believe the best course of action here is to follow the rules of criminal procedure and to deny the motion.
May I go on? Sure. I do not disagree with Mr. Klinger that the Florida Rules of Criminal Procedure were amended in 1989. But Rule 3.220 that he's relying on refers to what they are required to give us. We are not asking for a copy of the rough notes. We are asking for preservation of the notes. And I do this, Judge, because in 2 other capital cases in this jurisdiction, I've had officers, lead detectives, when I've been deposing them, they cannot recall certain incidences relating to their involvement in the case. And during the course of deposition, I say to them, would it be helpful if you if you were able to reflect on your rough notes? They say yes. I redepose them with their rough notes. Those rough notes have substantial amount of information that's not included in their reports, including exculpatory evidence in 2 cases that were capital cases before the 17th Judicial Circuit. I'm not asking for the notes. I'm asking for the preservation of the notes so that if somewhere down the line I need them, I can compel the production of them. And in terms of this case not being different, it's no different than any other capital case that is currently being heard before the 17th Judicial Circuit. But capital cases are in fact different. There's a higher degree of reliability and scrutiny that is required by the court. So we're not going to be in a position where we're going to compare a 3rd degree possession of cocaine to this case. It's different because there are 17 victims. I certainly wouldn't want to minimize how they feel and compare it to any other case in this courtroom. 17 deceiving victims, yes. So, Judge, I agree that they are not compelled under 3.220 to give us those notes at this point, but that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for preservation of those notes. And Judge, the state does have an obligation to review those notes, and I don't even know if they've had an opportunity to do that, and then turn over anything that they believe could be exculpatory. So we're simply asking for the preservation of those notes, which the court, even though it's a 1979 case, it's still good law. And it's a it's a 4th DCA case where the court was reminded that they have the ability to order the preservation.
But you're not asking, in other words, you're not limiting this to a request to preserve the notes of the lead detectives. You're asking for every single officer, including, I mean, there were pages and pages of officers that when I reviewed the discovery submission, there were pages and pages of category C. You're asking for every single witness.
I'm asking for every single witness, Judge, and here's an example. I have reviewed a police officer's report that's 2 paragraphs. I then review their body cam video that's 3 hours, where they're writing pages and pages of notes that are not included or referenced to in their report. That's just one example, and I haven't completed my review of the discovery. But I don't know what will be relevant. I don't know if we're going to have contradictions between officers. And I don't see where the prejudice is to the state of Florida to save or maintain all of these records. The BSO has an evidence room downstairs. There's one in Fort Lauderdale. And I don't believe the state of Florida has demonstrated any kind of prejudice that they would have by maintaining these case notes.
I may respond, Your Honor. That's the purpose of depositions. That is why we have a little liberal discovery rule, and counsel is allowed to take depositions, none of which have yet been taken in this case. That's where they can find out this information. When we argue the next motion, I was going to go deeply into Brady, because that's what they're talking about here. They're talking about exculpatory evidence that somehow in these notes somewhere there's going to be something that maybe, possibly, would be favorable to the defense and also material to the defense. The state is well aware of its Brady obligations. There's no need to be preserving all these extra notes. That's what depositions are for. They can find out through the depositions, and then there is vehicles for which they can go forward if they were to find something that they felt was a violation of Brady. And I was going to get into all of that.
And guys, as the status hearing continues in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, we saw a couple glimpses of Nikolas Cruz himself over at the other table. These tend to kind of go on. They are talking about the release of certain documents in this case, so it's sort of slow rolling, but we're going to keep an eye on it in here in the newsroom. And I want to show you another screen right now. We have up in the right-hand corner of your screen, that's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia speaking on and responding to this morning's joint news conference with President Trump and President Putin in Finland. This, what you see right there on the right side, is a bipartisan kind of gathering hosted by the Atlantic Council. Now, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, Republican from Florida, Mark Warner, a Democrat from Virginia, was supposed to actually be there as well. Unfortunately, Rubio had to back out of this one. So right now, Warner is kind of fielding some of these questions and talking about his reaction to this morning's summit in Finland. So we're going to go ahead and listen into some of that. And as we get other senators' reactions from the Hill, we'll bring you that video as well. So switching over this feed, there's a quick shot of Nikolas Cruz, bottom left of your screen, head down on the table. As we've seen him so many times in court, when we have the ability to take it live, we do try to put it up there for you. So you can see him there at that desk. We're going to keep an eye on that. Like I said, we're going to listen in, and let's switch over to Senator Warner and see what he has to say about this meeting from this morning in Helsinki.
I'd be curious to see some of their reactions. And what we talked about on a going forward basis was focus on components of election security, both at the ballot box and at the voter file level. Secondly, how we can have better cybersecurity around protection of our political parties and candidates. And third, the question of the use and misuse of social media, and particularly our colleagues in the UK are doing some really good work there. And while we may have to take on action on an individual basis, the more that we can share best practices, whether it's, as Member Collins has indicated, about geolocating of origination of a post. If it's saying somebody's posting saying they're in the UK or in Minnesota, but they're actually originating in a foreign domain. Questions about whether individuals should have the right to know where you're being contacted by an individual versus a bot or an automated account. I mean, there are issues that cross borders in this area that I think we need, we're just at the beginnings of a policy debate on. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to particularly thank my European colleagues and urge everyone to stay. Senator Rubio and I will be hosting a roundtable on this subject very shortly, and then there will be, I believe, an open session later this afternoon. I can't stress enough how important it is to hear from our European colleagues, particularly those nations who have experienced this type of activity for many, many years. And in many ways, I go back to General Germazov, one of the Russian military chiefs, who back in 2011 basically outlined the 21st century Russian military doctrine, where he said, in a sense, that Russia could not compete with the full West in terms of total dollar amounts spent on tanks, guns, ships. But in the realm of cyber and misinformation and disinformation, Russia can compete and be successful. And clearly, so far, in terms of their disruption in the American election, more and more evidence of their disruption in the Brexit vote, their attempts to disrupt the Dutch elections, the French presidential elections, and obviously with some of the more countries of former Eastern Europe where they've been active for some time, that strategy has been successful. And in America and in the West, we have to have a better plan to counter it. Thank you all very much.
All right, guys, well, just moments ago, Senator Bob Corker from Tennessee, Republican senator from Tennessee, had some of his own remarks on Capitol Hill about the Helsinki summit. So we're going to go over there to, like I said, this video from just a few minutes ago, Senator Corker's remarks on the summit.
When he does believe the European Union was created, at our expense, that they're there. I look at them as a trading bloc that shares values and common interests with us, and think we should do everything we can to really strengthen the transatlantic relationship. And there's no doubt that today, in a way, this helped to continue to undermine that to a degree. I don't view them that way. There are imperfections in the European Union, there's no question, in how they're able to consider themselves a union without having the fiscal union and having the differences that the central bank creates within those entities, and they've got tremendous issues. But look, and they're going to have to sort them out themselves, and the whole migration issue is a difficult issue for them. But look, they are our friends. I mean, they are our allies. They're going through a very difficult period of time right now, and our role should be to help the stability of that area, and know that they are people who share our values. I mean, you look at where the world is today. There's numbers of, I just read a book by Hans Rosling, I think his name is, a Swedish writer, called Factability. I just heard a great talk this week by someone else saying the same. The world has improved tremendously. People don't realize this through the years, and so much of it is because of the institutions that we have put in place post-World War II. And, we need to continue to build on a world that shares our values. And I think that things like was done last week, and I'm talking more about the NATO situation, even though, again, I like the way that it ended. Along the way, we're damaging that relationship. And it's a relationship, again, that has stood well for the American people. And so it's been a week of a degree of calamitous types of events. Today's event, which again, I thought the presentation before the questions was actually pretty good. I thought when we moved into Q&A, I found it deeply disappointing.
You've said the United States get anything out of this today? Last question. Did the United States get anything out of this today?
Well, I don't know. I know they did mention the area in southwest Syria. If you remember, several months ago, we said if certain activities occurred, we were going to intervene. Those activities occurred, we didn't intervene, and so it's just difficult to tell. Again, I want our relationship with Russia to improve. I want us to end up having a good relationship with Russia. But we all know that Putin does not respect someone who does not push back strongly against what they're doing. And I felt today that did not occur. And again, I can't speak to what took place privately, but what took place publicly, to me, did not accrue.
Senator, you said Republican leaders you've been critical of for not wanting to, quote, poke the bear when it comes to the president. Is it time for them to poke the bear about this issue?
Well, again, let's see what tangible comes out of this.
But should they speak up and raise their concerns?
Well, I mean, I can only speak up myself, and I am doing so, and I'm sure that others will. But we could have had a better day than we had.
Beyond the content of the president's words, were these the words of a competent president?
I think I've been very outspoken on those kind of things. So thank you, guys. Thank you.
And thank you.
And that'll wrap up that coverage of senators' reactions to that summit this morning in Helsinki, Finland. Over now to a live video that we have coming in from the border of Texas, I believe. This is some sort of press conference dealing with separation of families and sort of what the status is, the update on that. There seems to be a family with him. Take a look for yourself and listen in.
Many of you were here for the press conference when we had the two dads who were reunited with their tender age children, and they sat right here with their children, and those children were doing very well with their dad. I myself was really impressed with how well they were doing. I was standing outside when the van pulled up, and I got to see the dads with their children getting off the van, and I was very much looking at the interaction between the children and their dad to see if what the separation had caused, and I was really elated to see that the dynamics were very, very good. We received a family yesterday where the dynamics were not as good, and which makes me want to step back and simply reflect at the consequences of separating children from their parent. And so for right now, we're going to ask the media to please give our hospitality center some space. Give us the opportunity to work out the arrival of these families, the processing of these families. And I think all of you have seen that I made a real effort to keep the media informed and involved. And my hope is to continue to do that. But right now, I'm asking the media to protect and to respect the integrity, the privacy of the facilities that we are using to receive the family.
Ruben, can you explain a little bit more about the family dynamics you saw without invading their privacy too much? But we've seen other stories of abandonment concerns from the kids and things like that, and these reunifications don't go the way people think they want to go because if both parents and the child have been through some trauma. So can you talk about what you saw last night?
This is based on a pretty brief observation with father and child, and the best way that I would describe this little boy who was 6 years old, the best way that I can describe it is looking all around, no smile, just looking all around, trying to understand what is happening, and I could not help but ask myself if part of what's going through this little child is someone going to take me away again? That's the impression that I had. The insecurity that then results from that kind of a separation, that it's a separation that has no explanation, and especially when you're dealing with that age group, it's a separation that that is very, very difficult to explain to someone that young. Okay.
Ruben, if people at large want to make donations for these people that are coming in, that are being reunited and whatever, is there things that you want, things that you need, and things that you don't want?
Okay, thanks so much for asking that. We have been inundated with a lot of donations, and so what we first always call, please don't show up the door with a donation, as well intended and as grateful as we are for the outpouring on the part of people, because that's what changed this policy. We must never, ever forget that this policy changed because the people of the United States stood up and said, we will not be defined by something like this. So we are deeply grateful for all the people that have wanted to help. We have received a lot of Pampers, we've received a lot of hygiene items, and so we ask, please do not simply drop off donations. That is not helpful to us across the board. If you want, call and ask, is there something that you need today? And that way we can respond to the individual. The obvious, most helpful thing are monetary donations. When someone simply sends a check to Annunciation House that says, use it for the work that you're doing, because that just gives us the discretion that we need. Right now, the priority is receive the families. We're connected to organizations that can help us provide transportation funds to get people on their way. The one exception that I would say is that we need volunteers to help us staff. One of the concerns that we have is that there's an intrinsic challenge in reuniting a child and an adult who's in detention. If you have an adult that's in detention, for example, in Sierra Blanca, and that child is flown in, there's a logistical problem as to where can we hold that child, because we can't hold the child inside of a detention facility. And so one of the concerns we have is that we might have to deal with that the child arrives, they're on a flight at 10 o'clock, they bring the adult in from Sierra Blanca, They reunite the child, they do the paperwork, and the child is ready to be transported with the dad or the mom, is transported at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that we may find ourselves having to deal with receiving families at different hours of the day or night. We wish it wasn't that way, but there is an inherent logistical challenge because you can't keep minors in facilities designed for adults. So, okay. As I mentioned at the beginning, we received a number of families 3 weeks ago whose children had been separated, and in this instance, the ones that were released were the parents without their children, and they have been with us since then. And Tater has been working tirelessly with the social workers at ORR. The children of these two parents are physically located in the El Paso ORR facilities. And so we now feel the need to bring their situation before the media, and to address that, Tater's going to take over. I'm going to have to excuse myself. I have a
Secretary, and it is an honor to be here today with so many dedicated public servants who work every day to help America grow. It is an honor to be here at the United States Department of Commerce. Before I get started, let me bring greetings from a great champion of American jobs and workers and American commerce. I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
School board report, and just for the purpose of just saying to the court that should it come for your purview, the issues, at least as to the fair trial aspect, are exactly the same. There's a jurisdictional issue, or whether this court would assume review of it. Wanted the court to know I was not there last Wednesday, Ms. McNeil was, but the school board had filed for a declaratory action, I guess the court knows, and there really was no indication from what I understand that Judge Henning did not want to review it, or that she was going to boot it over to you in any way. So, but that would be something that would be determined on a judicial level. But we are asking that the courts take jurisdiction of it or review it. It's sort of in line, or it is completely in line with the Chief Judge's order for your purview.
From a historic trip to Europe. Truth is, over the last week, the world saw once again that President Donald Trump stands without apology as leader of the free world. As evidence, over the past week, our president concluded a highly successful meeting in Brussels, where he called on our NATO allies to uphold their commitment to our common defense, and thanks to the president's leadership, NATO is stronger than ever before. Our president then met with Prime Minister May of the United Kingdom, where he opened the door to a free trade deal with our closest ally, and earlier today, President Trump completed what he described as a direct, open, and deeply productive dialogue with President Putin in Helsinki. As the president said, it was a constructive day, but it was only the beginning, adding, in his words, that diplomacy and engagement is always preferable to conflict and hostility. Disagreements between our countries were discussed at length, but what the world saw, what the American people saw, is that President Donald Trump will always put the prosperity and security of America first. And American prosperity is what brings me here today. Since the outset of our administration, we've been busy getting this economy moving again. We've been rolling back red tape at a record pace, unleashing our nation's boundless natural resources. And just before Christmas last year, this president signed the largest tax cuts and tax reform in American history. The results have been remarkable. Since our election, 3.7 million new jobs have been created by businesses large and small across America. Unemployment has fallen to lows not seen in nearly 20 years, and the president and I are particularly proud of the fact that we have now set a new record, the lowest unemployment ever recorded for African Americans and Hispanic Americans all across this nation. The truth is, under President Donald Trump, jobs are coming back. Confidence is back. In a word, America is back, and we're just getting started. But I came here today, first and foremost, to express the gratitude of your president and the American people for the work that each and every one of you do to strengthen American prosperity here at the United States Department of Commerce. This year, this department celebrated its 115th anniversary. As history records, in 1903, President Theodore Roosevelt recognized the need to create a new agency capable of identifying and unlocking the unlimited potential of the new American era. And this department exists because of his far-sighted and quintessentially American leadership. And just as President Roosevelt had a vision of a boundless American future in his time, so too President Trump has been busy since the first day of our administration, charting a new course for American prosperity in our time. And the Department of Commerce has been playing a vital role in this exciting and prospering new era. So before I go further, let me say that we're grateful to the work that each and every one of you do, but we're especially grateful for the leadership here at the Department of Commerce. This department is today led by a leader of extraordinary experience and accomplishment who was willing to come into federal service to bring greater prosperity to every American. Will you all join me in thanking the 39th United States Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross.
So as Vice President Pence goes on to give some congratulations to the Department of Commerce and the Secretary Wilbur Ross, we also have on our other feed, as we were showing you, the update from some of the families at the border and the situation down there. Families being reunited, thank goodness, and also some updates on the separation of families down there. So a bunch of kind of, unfortunately, sadder news today that we have covered here in D.C., really all over. Started at the top of the show with President Trump and President Putin in Helsinki, and then a lot of reaction surrounding that. We're going to be watching this evening, too, for more reaction from lawmakers here in the States. So with that, guys, we are going to slowly, hey, good to see you, Hemi. Thanks for being on the stream. Thanks for commenting, guys. We're going to kind of roll it out here from Vice President Pence at Commerce. That started a little bit later than we thought. But I promise you guys tomorrow, happier news, some sports-related stuff. We're going to be down at Nationals Park all morning with our anchors anchoring the morning show from the park, getting ready for the All-Star Game here in D.C. Super excited to have everybody here in town for that, and it's a good time for all of us here in D.C. So we're going to be watching for that. Lots of stories, packages to bring you, interviews, more exciting stuff, but a lot of serious news today, a lot of politics, and let us know what you think. We covered the meeting with President Putin, of course, this morning, and there is a lot of reaction to be had. So we're going to be gathering that all together, social media and whatnot, and producing some of the stuff for you. We'll show you more of that on tomorrow's stream, and we'll be up as normal, 11:30 here in the newsroom. So you can follow us on Fox 5 DC on all platforms, and our website here, if you're on it now, fox5dc.com, and our YouTube channel also. So subscribe to us here. You'll get a pop-up for whenever we come up on your phone. And we'll be back, as usual, tomorrow. All right, check in with us then, guys. For now, I'm Molly Nevola in the newsroom. We'll see you tomorrow.
us a couple of minutes of your reaction to that, Senator Warner?
I think President Trump's actions today were outrageous. The President of the United States sided with Vladimir Putin over the unanimous assessment of the American intelligence community, over the bipartisan conclusion of the Senate Intelligence Committee, over the acknowledgement of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, the social media platforms that Russia manipulated their platforms, and sided with, again, Putin over our allies who came from Canada and across Europe to share how we can prevent this kind of Russian interference on a going forward basis. I think in the coming days, there will be time for all of us to stand up and say, which side are we on? And I'm hopeful and confident that in the Senate, we'll continue to follow this threat, continue our investigation, and make sure that the American public gets the whole truth. It was a pretty remarkable day.
Senator Rubio?
Well, I would add, what the President said today is not accurate. The intelligence community has assembled probably an unparalleled amount of evidence in regards to the Russian, not just efforts to interfere in 2016, but ongoing efforts to interfere in American society. And it's not limited to the territory of the United States. These are efforts they undertake in many other parts of the world. Many of the countries that have been affected by it are represented here today by elected officials in those jurisdictions. I'm only going to comment on the press conference. I wasn't in the meeting. None of us were in the meeting. We don't know what was addressed in the meeting or what was raised. But all I can speculate is that there is an effort underway to sort of figure out if by being nice to Vladimir Putin, there is a way that we can establish a better working relationship, which in a perfect world would not be a bad thing between two nations that possess 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. The flaw in that, which I think goes to the heart of this very issue, is that Vladimir Putin is not interested in a better working relationship with the United States because he views the world, he views geopolitics as a battle between the strong and the weak. He believes that at the end of the Cold War, the West, and in particular the United States, that was strong, took advantage of a weak Russia. He intends to reestablish Russia as a global world power on par with the United States. And he doesn't believe in win-win scenarios. He believes in zero-sum. And therefore, he thinks the only way to make Russia stronger is to make America weaker. And these election interference efforts are a part of it. And you have to understand that. Any policies that are not built on that reality, and I would say any rhetoric that's not built on that reality, is destined to be counterproductive, perhaps dangerous, and most certainly fail. And so, again, I think that is a really clear, we have to take the partisan, this was not a partisan interference. This was an effort to have happen what has happened, which is in America that 2 years after the election is still having this issue dominate and divide us. This was their goal. This was the primary objective of Vladimir Putin, was to sow permanent instability in American society and political culture so that we're so busy fighting each other, we don't have time to take him on as a threat.
Now, let me just add, if Mr. Trump wouldn't stand with American and Western institutions and stand with his own intelligence community assessment in public, who knows what he might have agreed to in private. And it was one of the reasons why so many of us felt that making sure that he pressed this issue, that he needed not to have a one-on-one meeting, but needed to have other Americans in the room so we could get an accurate readout of what really happened in that over 2-hour session.
Let's stand back. Okay, if he did that, if he at least publicly is saying, I don't agree, or I can't really say, the President of the United States has all of the information that any person in the world could ever ask for. He has intelligence, he has any type of fact that he wants, he can get. So let's forget about him for a minute and just go back to what you two gentlemen know as senators. Is there any doubt in your mind about the interference? And I know that some of it you cannot share with us because of security concerns, but do you have an understanding of the, let's say, the size or the magnitude of that interference?
Yeah, I take you back to October of 2016. I was running for re-election, and these whole WikiLeaks issues were coming up, and I said I wouldn't talk about it because it was the work of a foreign intelligence agency at the time. I still think well, we may have been aware of who it was. I wasn't clear yet how that would be classified, but I've never had any doubt. As far as the scale and the scope, that's an ongoing effort. It's broad enough, large enough, and impactful enough for us to be sitting here with you today, in my view, and I think Mark would agree, not just to tell you it happened, but that I believe it will happen again. Whether it's an 18 or 20 or in the future, I don't think this is the last time we're going to deal with these issues, and in fact, I think they're going to get better at it.
And we know three things. We know that Russia hacked in to both political parties and then released selective information on one party, on the Democrats, to try to help Trump and hurt Clinton. We know that Russian and Russian agents scanned or penetrated over 20 states' electoral systems. And we know that Russians and their agents manipulated social media in ways that literally hundreds of millions of Americans were contacted with mostly fake information distributed by fake accounts to try to sow dissension. And as Marco said, they picked one candidate in 2016, but there's nothing about the Russian efforts that favor one side over the other. They favor dissension in democracies. They favor undermining our trust in our open electoral systems. And we've done a kind of a back of the envelope analysis. And if you add up all the money the Russians spent in our elections, in the Brexit vote, and in the French presidential elections, you add that all together, it's less than the cost of one new F-35 airplane. So if we're talking about 21st century conflict in the cyber domain and the misinformation and disinformation domain, I think we're seeing the opening shots of what's going to be an ongoing struggle.
Could we go into one aspect of this? I mean, we know RT, social media, we now know the military intelligence, the GRU, but why would they go into infrastructure and especially the infrastructure of the United States? But what is the ultimate purpose for that? Because they appear to have not done anything malign specifically, but they got in there.
Well, I think to think that the Russian attempts to penetrate are limited to just our elections infrastructure is wrong. Right. They're trying to penetrate all of our systems. I see friends in the audience who are looking at protections of our judicial system and our power grid system, the vulnerabilities we have in the cyber domain. I see colleagues from the Ukraine where we've seen the power to interfere and shut down our power grid. I think in our election system, and remember we have a very bifurcated, trifurcated election system, federal, state, local. People think about, well, they didn't go in and change a vote total that we know of. Well, at the end of the day, you don't need to change a vote total. If you go upstream and look at the fact that in America, 90% of all the voter files are controlled by 3 companies. What happens is they penetrate those companies and certain people are left off a registration list. You just simply need to actually seed distrust and faith in the accuracy of the system for Russia to accomplish its goal. And remember, again, not to sound partisan, but I'd never heard prior to the 2016 election any American presidential candidate from either party, before the election even took place, be willing to question the legitimacy of our voting process. Those were the words that Mr. Trump said during the election process, which frankly comes right out of the Russian playbook.
And let me just add to that on the election part. I'm from Florida. Some people might recall it wasn't that long ago, about less than 600 votes determined the presidency of the United States in Florida. Imagine now sort of a effort in a state decided by that number of votes that would have involved some of these things alone. I mean, you could get to Inauguration Day with a significant percentage of the country believing that the individual being sworn in was not legitimately elected because of irregularities they may not have even been aware were put in place. I'm not saying that's what happened in 2000. I'm saying that irregularities that they may not even be aware that were the process of a foreign interference. And I think your question was about infrastructure outside of elections, the electrical grid and the like.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's an asymmetrical capability that is a powerful tool in a time of conflict, or even knowing that they have the capability. Imagine for a moment that the U.S. and Russia winds up in some sort of conflict, some part of the world, and they are successful at being able to shut down electric power in key parts of the country. The capability to do that would trigger all-out panic in the United States, would deeply distract us from whatever it is we were focused on, and may very well imperil our ability to engage in conflict or to resolve it for that matter. So it's a powerful tool at their disposal that could include our banking sector outside of just electricity. It can involve all sorts of critical infrastructure, which used to be vulnerable to nuclear attack or conventional attack now are a couple clicks away from being a tool you could use against a potential adversary.
We just passed a budget where America's spending over $700 billion in defense spending. Marco and I supported that. We want to stay strong. Russia has a defense budget of about $70 billion.
Right.
I sometimes worry that we're buying the world's best 20th century military when conflict in the 21st century, and as Senator Rubio pointed out, in this asymmetrical realm of cyber, misinformation, disinformation, we got to really up our game.
Mm-hmm. You know, after that news conference, I was thinking, okay, Vladimir Putin goes home. What lesson does he take from this? How do you, in other words, how do you stop this? Can you even stop it? And just in a very specific way, Senator Rubio, I know you have this Deter Act with Senator Van Hollen. Can you explain, what, you know, how would that work? What's
yeah, I mean,
the idea?
It puts in place sanctions pre-existing, so you don't have to wait for Congress to review the intelligence, have a long-winded debate, and then put in place sanctions. It creates a mechanism by which the Director of National Intelligence could surmise that, in fact, there's been an effort by a foreign power to interfere in our elections, and once a determination of that nature is made, sanctions would kick in. So it would put in place pre-existing consequences for doing this, sort of raising the bar on the cost versus the benefit of it, which I think at this point, one of the reasons why Putin pursued this route is he figured there was enough deniability around it, and the costs were low compared to the benefits of being able to do this. And so our hope is to put that in place so any potential adversary in the future, it could be Russia, it could be another foreign nation for that matter, would know that this is the price you will pay if you do this ahead of time, and built that into the cost-benefit analysis. I'm not arguing that that alone will be enough, but it is certainly better than what we have now, which is still sort of an unclear response. We don't have a broader cyber policy as a nation, which we desperately need, but when it comes to our democracy and our republic, there is no pre-existing built-in reaction to what will happen if you do. You know what will happen if you attack us militarily. I don't think there's any clear understanding of what the crisis is if you attack us in this way.
That's exactly the issue I wanted to ask you, Senator Warner. You know, in the old days, you had mutually assured destruction for nuclear weapons, that it was inconceivable that anybody would attack because we'd all be destroyed. That doesn't exactly, that's not the rationale of the cyber weapons. So how do you deter? I mean,
well, a couple of things. One, I think Senator Rubio's bill, deter, is a good one. There's other bipartisan legislation that would also up information sharing on our election system. And our committee and others supported $380 million into the federal budget that will help states upgrade their voting machines to make sure you've got an auditable paper trail. That's all steps in the right direction. But I echo what Margo said. We need a cyber doctrine. And this is not just a critique of Trump. This goes back to Obama and Bush as well. We've not had a cyber doctrine that is going to require some level of collaboration with our partners around the world, that some of these cyber attacks are in effect so beyond the pale that we need to have some common norms. And if a nation then intervenes in that kind of attacks, I don't want to draw the analogy to nuclear, but I draw the analogy to chemical weapons or landmines, you might have lower attribution standards in terms of being willing to strike back. There's some low-hanging fruit. We all have heard of the so-called Internet of Things, 10 billion devices that are all connected to the Internet. We're going to go to 25 billion devices over the next 5 years, just here in America that are connected. We ought to have a basic security protocol, at least for those devices that are purchased by the government, not some massive government regulation, but no embedded passcodes, some ability to make sure that these devices are not hackable, some, again, basic security concern. That would be a step in the right direction. And I think as well, we're going to need to articulate a cyber doctrine that not only talks about defensive cyber capabilities, but potentially the use of offensive cyber capabilities.
Like rules of war.
Norms of behavior in a world where any nation state, or for that matter, even smaller group of dedicated individuals, can inflict asymmetrical damage. It's not based upon how big your army is or how big your navy is. These tools are extraordinarily asymmetrical, and our vulnerabilities, and candidly, we have not done a good enough job from the intelligence community side and others of warning the private sector of the extent of the vulnerabilities we have.
Right. Could I just go back, not to talk about the Cold War too much, but with nuclear weapons, we had discussions and negotiations with the Russians. President Trump has raised an issue which I don't know the details of. I don't think anybody does quite at this point, of some type of talks with the Russians about cyber. Do you have any more clarity? What is he talking about? And is it a good idea?
Well, I'm not, so in nuclear weapons, we both had them, we both said we had them, and we both explained the purpose of having them. I think the problem we have here is we don't interfere in Putin's elections, primarily because he doesn't really have elections. And the other side of it is he denies having done it. And so I would imagine you could talk about it and so forth, but I'm not sure what it produces. This is really just a calculated play on this front. He's not going to try to match us aircraft carrier by aircraft carrier, but what he has figured is that one of the ways that I can weaken America is by driving what's already happening there, which is identify, they showed a great understanding of nuance. So I heard some people say on television it wasn't a very sophisticated operation. I would disagree in some respect. They did, as the effort went on, show some understanding of the nuances of American politics, sort of understand what the fracture points were in society and really try to exploit and drive them. I think also...
I think he understood maybe better than the Democrats.
Well...
to the court in advance, and that is just for the record, your memo in opposition to the defendant's motion for a protective order on defendant's statement, which I received on July 12th. And that's the only one from all of the media entities.
That's the only one that was filed. Yes.
With regard to this specific issue.
Correct.
Okay.
We didn't file an additional memorandum.
Okay. I know, right. I know that there were more than one. There's more than one law firm that represents more than one news media outlet, and I just wanted to make sure there wasn't another one that I did not receive.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
And thank you, Your Honor. We did also file a notice of filing documents, which included some news articles as well. Going to the first, the scheme that I think the court well understands at this point, and that is that under Chapter 119, statements, documents that are given or required to be given to the defendant in a criminal case reach the status of a public record under Chapter 119. And in that scenario, confessions or the substance of a confession is considered to be exempt under Chapter 119 from disclosure under the statutory scheme. It's important, and we've focused on that in our memorandum, that the Article 1, Section 24 of the Florida Constitution provides a constitutional right of access to public records. Also, Chapter 119 provides a statutory right. Those two are read together, and the case law that has developed and is well established in the state of Florida requires the court to narrowly construe exemptions and broadly construe the rights of access. And so what we've tried to do is explain to the court why it's important to limit any disclosure, any withholding under 119 to the actual substance of a confession. And that has been described by the Attorney General in numerous cases that we provided to the court. For example, in the Times Publishing case, it should be limited to only those portions in which the defendant acknowledges guilt of the offense charged. That's what constitutes the substance of a confession. Everything else extraneous in that situation should be released under Chapter 119, but it is the court's obligation to go through those standards, and we provided the court with cases, the AGO opinion, other things that talk about what it is that is and is not the substance of a confession. The underlying premise that's important is that substance of a confession should be construed narrowly, and that is the court's constitutional obligation. Of course, we haven't seen the statement, and I would go back in that regard to Miami Herald case that was cited repeatedly by the defendant in this case. And if you'll look closely at the Miami Herald case, many statements were released in that case, and a lot of the discovery was released. And so that case does not stand for, as I believe the Public Defender's Office is trying to say, that a broad withholding by this court of evidence that has reached the status of a public record is appropriate under Florida law. It definitely is not. And so with that, I'll move on then to what the separate next issue is, which is once a court determines that a particular batch of records is public record subject to disclosure under Article 1, Section 24 and Chapter 119, the defendant or any other party can come in and say that information should not be released because it is prejudicial to the defendant's fair trial rights, Sixth Amendment trial rights. And I think this is where the argument got a little sideways for the public defender, and that is that I thought that I heard him saying that that the evidence or the documents that are the statement or whatever it is that we'll be talking about here, that the public doesn't really have the right to pick this over or to know what it says, and that is somehow inappropriate in a case of this magnitude. And I would submit that in a case of this magnitude, it's more important that the public have access to all of the records that they are entitled to under the statute and under the Constitution. And when you look at the test that is employed, which is, we talked about the Lewis test, the court must find through evidence. And the only evidence we have here in this case is newspaper coverage, television coverage, digital coverage, which I think underscores the importance of what already is out there and the fact that there's a great public concern about how this case is handled, why Mr. Cruz did what he did, how he did what he did, what happened afterwards, the law enforcement response. All of that is being publicly debated. Commissions are looking at it, civil courts are looking at it in context of public records requests, and this court will be looking